I'd rather the Manhattan office than the Bronx station. Roach infestation. Like roach.
I heard they had bugs in there.
Water bugs, but we don't have them on.
Good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session of the City Planning Commission. I hope everybody had a good 4th of July holiday and a relaxing weekend. We're joined today by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioner Benjamin, Commissioner Cerullo, Commissioner Crowell remotely, Commissioner Dweck, Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Kermani, Commissioner Marin remotely, and Commissioner Rempershad. First off, I wanted to encourage everyone to attend tomorrow's remote public information session on City of Yes for economic opportunity. This second City of Yes zoning text amendment, if adopted, will help support small businesses and create vibrant commercial corridors across the 5 boroughs, thus offering another boost to our economy. For example, City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, which is set to go into the city's public review process this fall, would be the largest expansion of space available for small-scale clean manufacturing, like ceramic makers, microbreweries, and coffee roasteries in New York City in over 60 years. It would also allow the new corner stores, including dry cleaners, bodegas, and delis, to be built in areas where they are currently not permitted and within walking distance of more than 250,000 New Yorkers. If approved, these updated rules and thus economic support for mom and pops all over New York City can be operational early next year. So I encourage people to get involved and ask questions by joining us tomorrow at this remote public session. It starts at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you can RSVP at nyc.gov/engage. I also want to update everyone listening, and certainly the Commission, on the progress that we are making toward creating a greener New York City. City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality proposal, which is already in the city's official public review process, has received 22 yes votes from community boards. In addition, this zoning text amendment, which will make it easier to install green energy generation and transportation systems throughout New York City, has also received yes votes from the Manhattan Borough Board, as well as Borough Presidents Vanessa Gibson of the Bronx, Mark Levine of Manhattan, and Donovan Richards of Queens. Thanks to all of them for their support, and we look forward to receiving more recommendations in the coming weeks. We hope positive ones. Last but never least, I want to thank the Urban Green Council, a not-for-profit dedicated to decarbonizing buildings for healthy and resilient communities, for inviting city planning to talk about this carbon-neutral zoning reform proposal today. The webinar is actually starting right around now. I'm sure it's going to be great and a detailed conversation on this vital plan to help New York City go green. I'd like to note that both of these proposals got shout-outs in the Mayor's Office of Food Policy's 2-year Food Forward Progress Report, which gives an update on the strides made since 2021 to create a more affordable, equitable food system. City Planning is proud to be part of this work. If adopted, carbon neutrality will allow more local-level composting and economic opportunity, enabling small-scale food and beverage production in commercial districts rather than only in manufacturing districts. The report also highlights the city's important Fresh program, one that's already bringing healthy food to over 1.2 million New Yorkers. You can find the full progress report at nyc.gov/food. On to today's agenda. We are starting with a pre-vote presentation on the Madison Square Garden special permit. I have more to say about this item once we start, followed by a presentation from Manhattan planner Stephen Johnson, and I'm sure what will be a lively discussion. We will move on to Stapleton, Long Island next. The Commission will learn about a proposal with over 80 homes, around 20 of them permanently income restricted through mandatory inclusionary housing, located at 541 to 545 Bay Street, which certainly shows the range of this Commissioner's work from the Madison Square Garden special permit to 541 Bay Street in Staten Island. This site would be incorporated into the Bay Street Corridor Special District, which was adopted by the Council in 2019. Transit-oriented development is key to the future success and health of our city, and this property is across the street from the Stapleton Staten Island Railway Station and near the Stapleton Waterfront Esplanade. In Queens, we will look at a proposal along the Whitestone Expressway that would create over 400 homes, around 110 of them income restricted permanently on the site of Whitestone Lanes. This project would be adjacent to a shopping plaza with a supermarket near several bus stops and close to an underpass. It would allow residents to access a DMV and a multiplex on the other side of the highway. The site would include 14,000 square feet of public open space. Next, we'll hear details on a series of zoning actions for 2226 3rd Avenue in East Harlem to facilitate a 10-story, predominantly life sciences building that would create good-paying jobs, only a 5-minute walk from the 125th Street subway station, and help advance this jobs-producing economic sector in our city. Moving down to the Lower East Side, we'll look at a proposed waiver for a ground floor retail requirement at 1538 2nd Avenue. In its place, the developer plans to place a daycare that would serve over 180 children, including infants, toddlers, 3K, and pre-K. So that's the agenda for today. Ryan, anything introductory before we go to our first item?
Yes, I do want to note that the time is 1:07 p.m. and a quorum is present in the hearing room at 120 Broadway. And we'll start today with future votes, or a future votes item. For Wednesday, July 12th, staff have prepared reports for the Madison Square Garden special permit and the arena text amendment. And Stephen Johnson is here with some follow-up. I believe you had some comments.
That's great, I do. Before we hear from Stephen about the latest on the MSG special permit, I just wanted to take a moment to step back and lay out everything that the Commission is considering here. We have now had multiple presentations, a hearing, and letters from stakeholders that the Commission has received in its materials, and that are publicly available online via our zoning application portal. Through this public process, and especially in the last month, we have secured a number of commitments from MSG as a part of their application for a special permit. The text amendment that the DCP is putting forward, and the chair certifications that we are proposing to add to this process. As a reminder, and to catch up those who are listening to this for the first time, MSG, like all venues in New York City, requires a special permit to operate with a crowd of over 2,500 people, and their current special permit is expiring this year in 2023. As we consider their application for a new special permit, City Planning has also introduced a zoning text amendment which updates the conditions under which such a special permit is granted. More recently, City Planning added 2 chair certifications to this process so that 6 months after a special permit is granted, I am able to confirm as the chair of the City Planning Commission that MSG is, in fact, meeting its commitments. Within that context, in order to meet the conditions of the special permit, MSG has made some important commitments. Creating a civic space that is worthy of New York City, making public realm improvements, including better connectivity, more seating, new glass canopies, unified design and improved signage, lighting enhancements, and bike parking. An improved loading and unloading system, including a traffic management plan in conjunction with DOT. Removal of trucks sitting on 33rd Street, adding flaggers for when trucks enter and leave, and identifying off-site, off-street truck parking. And of course, a commitment by MSG to collaborate with Amtrak, the MTA, and New Jersey Transit as plans for the reconstruction of Penn Station come together, whatever those plans ultimately look like. We know that there are a number of plans being considered, but it is City Planning's view that New Yorkers cannot wait for those plans for Penn Station to be finalized in order to benefit from these significant improvements to the area around MSG. The list of commitments that MSG has made are just a brief overview. Stephen will share more shortly. Contrast this list with the discussion 10 years ago when the Commission considered the special permit that is expiring this year, where there were no similar commitments made. With all of these improvements in mind, the Department of City Planning is recommending that we grant MSG a special permit to operate as an arena for a term of 10 years. Lastly, before we get to Stephen's presentation, I want to quickly address some of the feedback that we heard throughout the public review process. As I'm sure we are all aware, there are a number of ambitious proposals for the future of Penn Station, which is intertwined with the operations of MSG. We hope and expect that the rail agencies will deliver a great plan for Penn Station, and MSG has committed to collaborating with them. But we won't just take them at their word. We are requiring Madison Square Garden to come back to this commission once those plans are 30% complete to ensure that the arena remains appropriately compatible. All these proposals acknowledge that Penn Station and MSG are tightly intertwined and that there has not been a meaningful proposal for an alternate location for MSG at this time. Our consideration of the special permit today, which again, DCP is recommending a term of 10 years, does not preclude eventually moving the garden if a proposal to do so does come together. So I thank you all for your patience through this process. I'm sure we're going to have a lively discussion. Stephen, I want to thank you for all of your extraordinary efforts on this application. We know that it was a tremendous amount of work, and we look forward to hearing your updates today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Included in your briefing packages is the latest commitment letter dated July 7th, 2023 from MSG, detailing several new commitments that they are making related to the public realm, loading operations, and social impact. I will review that information, but I want to put the information within the overall broader context of a set of MSG improvements and commitments. They've sent in multiple commitment letters, which are all up on our city planning website on the portal. And there is also the department's arena text amendment that has subsequently been modified because of those commitments. I want to start with the applicant's proposed improvements from the filed application and move to where we are at right now. As part of the MSG special permit application to allow an arena with a capacity in excess of 2,500 seats, the department proposed a zoning text amendment to update the arena findings and incorporate some important new provisions in three broad areas. First is public spaces, open areas, and civic importance of the site. The second is loading operations, and the third is the consistency and compatibility of the arena in relationship to the transit facilities. So to address the first two findings, the applicant proposed these improvements for the public realm in February. So you have the decorative pavers and pigmented concrete, the 9 planter benches, planters along 2 exterior walls, a bike parking area, and POP signage. And there was no proposed improvements related to the loading. So the department continued working with the applicant team during the ULURP process, that is during public review, and we shared concepts and design strategies and public realm opportunities. And I'm going to mention some individual design elements, but they should be placed within the larger context of the whole site and the design proposal and how they relate to each other. So from this slide, we discussed amenity zones with seating and landscaping around the arena, curb extensions, bollards, and sidewalk widenings on 33rd, 31st, and 8th Avenue, and improvements to the 8th Avenue corners. And all these things focus on pedestrian circulation, pedestrian flow, movement, and public realm amenities. Then we have the 8th Avenue frontage, which is literally a blank slate, and how this is a great opportunity to do something related to the civic importance of the site that could be engaging and interesting and have a positive impact on the public realm. So there's this idea of creating a notable civic entrance on the corners of 33rd and 31st Street for the Penn Station entrances. So there's adding vertical elements to the corners and tying this all together with a unified design, a plan that shows consistency and a hierarchy of signs with improved lighting. And this is the concept drawing that the department put together, like the previous 3 slides. It's focused on the unified and consistent design and having a notable entrance into Penn Station. So now I want to take you through MSG's commitments, which came post-public hearing and are in addition to the proposed improvements from February that I showed on the second slide, which is the planter benches, bike parking, and the pop signage. So they have added a third planter here in the southeast corner at 31st Street in the mid-block. This really highlights how this has could become a significant public amenity with the social seating and people sitting around in the landscaping. And this is a southern exposure too, so I think this will be very beneficial with the sunlight, direct sunlight, and having a good landscaping feature here. And I think this gives the start of a real pops feeling, a New York City pops feeling here. So that additional planter is very much a concrete idea and design that was too late to include in the proposal. But the next couple of public realm improvements and commitments are more on a conceptual level. And this is one of those. So this is from their most recent letter to the Commission on Friday, just last Friday on the 7th. So the applicant has proposed a design concept of a 3D lenticular wall or an art wall. And this particular concept has different views depending on where you're sitting or standing and what angle you're at. This will not have any advertising signage or any accessory signage, but it will be related to the city and celebrating the city and highlight the civic importance of the site. So the applicant has committed to providing a unified signage scheme and design language related to the signage and the canopies. And they've retained a graphic design firm to do this. And they have a preliminary concept design proposal to allocate space to Amtrak to put up some Penn Station signage at this corner, or both corners on 8th Avenue. So this would make a more significant entrance. It'll be a grand entrance into the station on the 8th Avenue corners. And these show like a glass canopy with the lighting, the letters up, the name Penn Station. And obviously it's much more identifiable than what there is today. And these canopies could have extend over the plaza areas on the corner spaces and have a lighting scheme to illuminate them and highlight the station and reinforce the relationship between the public spaces and Penn Station and give these entrances a more prominent civic importance on the site. So now you can walk down the street and you won't be saying, where's the entrance to Penn Station? We have discussed here among the commissioners MTA bollards on the site, which MSG does not control. But we've also discussed how there are metal barriers littered everywhere around the site. You can see them here around security features. You can see them against the trucks, and you can see that woman with her luggage standing next to one. And I've witnessed people trying to walk around with their luggage around that area, and it's very difficult, and you're not exactly sure where you're supposed to be going. So MSG, in their recent letter, again on July 7th, is developing 2 design concepts for pedestrian accessible portions of the mid-block area and related to the metal barriers. The one concept will consist of enhanced lighting and wayfinding to ensure that these areas are discernible and do not hinder ped movements. And the other concept is they're looking at an immediate decluttering, which is their term, and which I agree with, of the mid-block driveway entrance area by removing or relocating a lot of these existing structures and metal barriers in the way. So this will help declutter the area, and MSG is making a commitment to do that now, and that can be done now. So this slide summarizes the public realm commitments to from MSG. So on the right is what their original proposal was in 2023 in February. And then on the left is the additional commitments that they've made post-public hearing. So moving on to the loading. So I have nothing to show you related to what they proposed for loading because they did not propose anything. So it's good to note that they've made significant progress and moved forward quite a way from that. And now they've committed to doing a lot of things outlined here on the slide related to their loading operations. So I've mentioned before that and Dan also mentioned that they're agreeing to keep 33rd Street free of staging for trucks. So this is a great example of how a loading impact can hinder the public realm. So an improvement to the loading is an improvement to the public realm in this example. So now, by moving the trucks out of there, a future step could be to extend the sidewalk out where the lay-by lane is and make a broader sidewalk, a better sidewalk, and more public space for everybody around. And this, of course, also brings 33rd Street one step closer to being a shared street. They've also agreed to flaggers to walk trucks back and forth to their off-street loading area. And after DOT reviewed their loading operations plan and made a recommendation, MSG has agreed as of June 23rd to prepare and obtain approval of a transportation management plan, which will be working with DOT and city planning and reflect DOT's transportation policies. So MSG has already engaged Newmark Group to conduct a study of available off-site parking locations for trucks, so they've already initiated that process. They've also agreed to 2 new commitments that they've just shared with us on Friday. The first one is related to zero-emission vehicles. So they've agreed to work with tour operators and other companies that bring trucks to the arena to increase reliance on zero-emission trucks, as well as for their own fleet. And they have other new commitment related to social impacts, the details of which have not been fleshed out at all. But I just wanted to mention that that was something else that they added to the letter. So MSG has made multiple commitments to work with the rail agencies and to collaborate on improvements to Penn Station. The future improvements do not have design plans as of yet, but there is a general understanding of what these improvements could look like and where they would be located. And obviously you can see one of those locations now in the mid-block train hall. So any changes to the MSG site plan of the areas under commission purview require that MSG comes back to get commission approval of that modification. So when the rail agencies have reached a benchmark of 30% design development, MSG must then return to the commission to modify their special permit, and the commission would then review whatever proposal they submit. So the proposal would include a set of drawings, detailed information, and an implementation schedule. The commission would then review the improvements and make a determination on whether the arena still meets the findings. In particular, the new finding that states the arena is appropriately consistent and compatible with existing transit facilities and with proposed improvements to such transit facilities. The arena has to be compatible with Penn Station. That's the issue. The proposed future improvements and upgrades to Penn Station will require use of MSG property and easements, and a cooperative relationship between the rail agencies and MSG is a must. So the applicant, MSG Arena LLC, requests a special permit to allow an arena with a capacity in excess of 2,500 seats. The requested action would facilitate the continued operation of the MSG Arena. In conjunction with that application, the department is proposing a text amendment as modified to amend this arena's special permit to incorporate these additional required findings related to public spaces, open areas, loading operations, and the consistency and compatibility of an arena with transit facilities. And now the 2 chair certs that are up on the screen there are set up so that if the application is approved, then the applicant would have to return within 6 months and submit a proposal. It doesn't have to be approved in 6 months. They just have to submit something to Dan, to the chair for review. So the department believes that with these improvements that the applicant has proposed related to the public realm and their commitments to further public realm improvements, the loading operations, and with the transit improvements, MSG has met the findings as modified. The department believes that these modifications to the text amendment related to the chair certification process and the requirement related to public realm and transportation management plan will ensure further development of these proposed improvements and that they are also consistent with the applicant's commitments. Regarding the special permit term, the department recommends a 10-year term. The purpose of the term is to allow for a reappraisal of whether the use continues to meet the relevant findings and conditions. This is a very complicated history here, and it's going to be a very complicated future at the site also. So currently, billions of dollars of transportation improvements are moving forward with Gateway, the Northeast Corridor, and the new tunnels under the Hudson that leads straight into Penn Station. So MSG and Penn Station are both very important to the city. So this is an opportunity to make substantial improvements at Penn Station, and the 10-year term will give the City Planning Commission the opportunity to review the progress of those improvements. I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm just going to start with one, and then I'm going right to commissioners. The new chair certifications for Public Realm and Transportation Management Plan. Some of the improvements and some of the commitments that MSG has made are able to be delivered more or less contemporaneously with the approval of the special permit. Some of them require more time and energy. Can you just put those in categories for us so that it's clear as to which things could be done now and which things would require a little bit more time?
Sure. Go back to that slide. So the issue is the things that they proposed in February, they also have time to implement those proposals, because that's something they can't just make appear out of nowhere. They have to fabricate the planter benches. They have to, get the design ready for everything. So it's not something that can happen quickly. So there's a window when they can do that too, which is approximately 2 years. And with the chair certs, that 2 years starts when those two sets of chair certs are approved. So when you look at these particular ones, they don't yet have a unified design plan. They've identified one location for additional public seating and landscaping, which is that third lima bean-shaped planter. They've identified some concepts of what they can do at 8th Avenue on the frontage, but they haven't come to a resolution on it, and we haven't reviewed anything. Same with the entrances to the station, the Penn Station entrances. Similar with the signage, they've hired 212, graphic design firm, to come up with a plan, and that's just initiated. They just started that. The metal security barriers are something that they're looking at right now, because those are movable and those are not on any plan. So there's no official site plan that has a bunch of metal barriers on it. So they've agreed to look at that and make improvements and declutter that right now. And then the coordination with DOT and MT on sidewalks and bollards, that's a future phase when there's funding to extend those sidewalks out. And then the mid-block taxiway pedestrian improvements, that they just suggested that on Friday. So I don't think there's anything in particular that's planned or coherent yet to review on that either.
Okay, and on loading?
So the loading, if this application is approved, they would have to immediately, they've actually already asked, they asked me, should we talk to DOT now? And I'm like, it can't hurt, right? So get the process going if you're approved. So that would have to be starting now. They've hired a company that I mentioned is looking at some off-site locations for them, and they want to move forward with that. So that would start immediately, that 6-month window would start immediately after approval, as would the 2 chair certifications.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Benjamin.
I have a number of questions, Stephen. I thought that you and your team have done excellent work, and yet I still have questions. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Well, the first one is, why 10 years? What is the rationale for 10 years as opposed to 15 years, as opposed to, and I'm not in favor of 5 years because I don't think anything can really realistically be accomplished before they come back. So why 10 years? What's the department's thinking on that?
So we looked at the previous 15-year term that the commission granted, and we thought that was a reasonable term at that time. And then we felt that with all these elements coming into play, with the rail agencies moving forward with the design plan, with these things happening with federal funding, and all these other elements that really make it more tangible and more realistic that something can happen here, we felt that the term should be shorter than 15, and it just felt like 10 was the right amount of time, because that would give them the ability to negotiate, discuss with the rail agencies a plan, and then they could come back. Now, if they're able to arrive at a consensus or agree to their business terms, if this project is approved, I mean, they could come back next year and say, we've agreed to terms, so this is what we want to do on the site. So it could really move quickly if they are able to negotiate that.
Can we write that into the report then?
They can come back whenever. That's
Right,
the
but
30%
we've
design
written
trigger.
specific things into the report. Maybe you want to think about that, because the report makes it seem as if they have 10 years and then they would come back if they needed more.
Okay.
I mean, there is even a piece that says we could take it away if they violate any of the terms of the restrictive deck, which wasn't attached to the report.
Yeah, so let me answer each one of those. So there's no restricted declaration
For the special permit?
for the special permit. Everything is in the resolution of the CPC reports, because there were a couple issues that couldn't get ironed out between city planning and the applicant. So all the stuff that would have been in the RD is now in the resolution. So that's all in there, and it's included.
If there's a reference to the restrictive deck in the resolution, we will correct that before the vote.
So also in reference to the 10-year term, so we have to be aware that the rail agencies might not come up with a plan. So then we have all these improvements related to the TMP, the Transportation Management Plan, the loading, and the public realm. Then those are really codified and are essential moving forward. Now, those will go forward even if they get a plan with the rail agencies, but if that's 10 years down the road, they would have to still put these improvements in.
I mean, as you know, I am somewhat more skeptical than most about the desire or ability of the rail agencies to move forward in concert with a plan, since they have not chosen to do so no matter what is presented to them. And that includes, I must say, the 2019, the start of the renovation of 2 Penn Plaza, where they had a whole area that could have been open to the sky, and they took no position on 2 Penn Plaza expanding into that space.
MSG didn't take a position, or?
No, the railroad didn't take a position.
Well, I know that they've made improvements to that frontage for the entrances. I don't know, I haven't seen the designs, but
Right.
I've been told that they've made better entrances for everybody coming in off the 7th Avenue frontage.
I guess we'll all see whether that happens, because when they said that they had improved the entrance to New Jersey Transit, I find it less impressive than one might have hoped. I mean, I'm always concerned when there are things beyond the control of MSG or any applicant that are really government. And one is whether DOT, in terms of the TMP, actually has the desire and the ability to review this and approve something within the 6 months. For the open space plan, you give the chair the ability to extend the time in certain circumstances. Why not do the same for the TMP if they don't get any responses from DOT?
So, 2 issues. So we've worked with DOT on this application, and they've been very responsive, and they've been great on it. So far, so good. And I think that they'll do well moving forward, because we're also working with them on, the Penn GPP area, the Empire Station, the new station, 1 block to the south. And we're working with them on all sorts of public realm improvements at city planning with DOT. So we think that's something that can happen. Now, the text is written that the applicant has to submit something within 6 months. So that doesn't necessarily mean everything is perfect, that everybody agrees on everything. They just need to submit something.
The way I read it, and maybe I read it incorrectly, is that they have to submit to DOT, and DOT has to send something to the chair for the chair's certification, and they also have to share it with the rail agencies who have then the opportunity to comment. So you're saying that that's not a shall, it's a may.
So the rail agencies, I think, will be happy to comment on anything related to MSG. So I'm not expecting them to dawdle. And I think MSG has to work with DOT on the TMP. Because if they don't work with them, it doesn't work. So
right,
I've worked
and DOT has to work with them.
Right. And I've worked with DOT on TMPs before, with the Howard Hughes Corporation. And it's...
For South Street Seaport?
Yeah, tin building, access road around it, and did not have any issues with that. It worked really well, and we're working on that now. So, I think it's something that can be achievable, and I think we shouldn't look at it as a hard deadline of 6 months, and that's it. There's some back and forth. They can submit something, and then, we can discuss what everything works with the TMP, what still needs to be negotiated. I'm sure we'll have questions about what's being proposed, and we'll talk to DOT about that too. So I think...
Well, I would just be more comfortable if that was spelled out, that this was not a hard and fast time, that the time could be massaged, or what was expected within the 6 months, that it's not chair cert approval. It's just...
Right.
Also, is it going to be shared with us, the commission, or just the chair?
Just the chair.
Well, I'd like to request that we be able to see it, because we're approving the special permit, assuming that the open space plan...
I'll be happy to share it, just to be clear.
You sure?
Positive.
And also, it'll be a public document. Once something is filed with us, then it is on our website. And also, we'll note that this language is similar to other actions in the zoning where we have things where we're requesting something from another agency. So we'll say, there shall be a report from either DOT or SBS or whoever it is, and that it is, prior to the chair acting or prior to the commission acting, that those reports will be submitted. And our sister agencies are usually game to do it. They understand deadlines, but also we're only putting the deadline on the applicant in this case. Once they submit something, we can ask them to submit something again, and if we don't like it.
And is that, maybe you could make it clearer for me that it's the submission to DOT, or who is the submission to? So that will count.
The TMP is developed with DOT and city planning. So they're in contact with DOT, is the leader here, and city planning for the whole process of the TMP.
Right.
And then
I'm just a pessimist, and I assume that they may not come to an agreement in the end within 6 months. So can MSG just submit it to you without DOT's sign-off, or is that what's necessary?
So there has to be an agreement at some point. So, for example, if there was something absurd like MSG is refusing to take down metal barriers that are lining the sidewalk, and that's ruining the whole TMP, then we could say, no, you have to take those down.
Or if DOT is refusing to take away parking.
Well, we'd talk with DOT and come up with the best plan as to how we can work through the TMP.
But you may want, for me, I would like to know specifically, is it the submission to DOT that has to be done within 6 months, no matter what the discussions are, or is it the submission to DCP?
6 months is the submission to the chair of the City Planning Commission. And they're working with DOT and city planning throughout those 6 months up into the submission to the chair.
Okay. Well, other people can go.
So, and what happens if the chair rejects it at that time? Assuming that they come up with a 6-month deadline, and then the chair rejects it for some reason, that there was no agreement, the language wasn't the way it should be. What
Well, the
happens?
city controls the TMP, working with MSG. So if they're not submitting an approved, that ends up being an approved TMP, then they'd be in violation of their special permit findings and conditions.
So I guess the answer is that they have to come to some kind of conclusion within that
Well,
time.
MSG does, but DOT does not.
We've got other people on the list, so did you have other questions?
I'm gonna
Commissioner,
wait
you're gonna wait,
for-
okay, Commissioner Cerullo, you're next.
Okay, Stephen, first, I share Commissioner Benjamin's, compliments to you and to the team, so I just want to begin with that. And I don't want to set the conversation back for a minute, but I need some clarification, and maybe the timing is actually appropriate based on this conversation. Could you just clarify exactly what's supposed to happen? We act this week. The council acts within the next 4. What happens, what's the first threshold trigger date for what occurs next? Is that the 6-month trigger?
Yes, that's right.
And at that time, what is expected to occur exactly? What is
At
the
6 months.
what does it mean when they have to submit something? What is something?
So they have to, so related to the public realm commitments,
Yep.
they have to submit a design plan, all these elements, they have to submit to the
Okay.
chair, all the bullets up there,
Yep.
and
The traffic piece.
the traffic, the TMP,
Yep.
and those are the 2 elements,
Those 2 categories, not the pen piece,
not the.
but those 2 categories, and all of them. Okay, this ties into my second question. It's all threaded together. They have made commitments in a letter that you have outlined to us, but we have, to do a whole host of things. What we can expect is that all of those things will appear in the 6-month letter as things on the public realm side, and I'm assuming they have to discuss with DOT even some of the public realm ideas, perhaps not, but maybe some of them actually tie into what DOT might have to weigh in on. And the TMP-related plan. So it's not as if the day after this process, if approved through the process, these things begin to happen, or perhaps maybe they will, and then some of these things that might show up in 6 months in their report to us that they submit, some of them may be completed and others are still to be developed.
So they can't complete a design concept that's not on the approved site plan. So, for example, the grand entrances,
Yes.
that would be on an approved site plan, showing where that is, if it's sticking out over the plaza, the location of it. So they can't just put that up on their own. They have to get approval from the chair for those. That's an example.
But we can expect to see those recommendations or the desires to do those things seeking the chair's certification in the 6-month submission.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And the 30% trigger coming back to us is related to the work MSG would be collaborating on with the railroad entities about the Penn Station improvements.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's how they separate themselves. So just to now go back for a moment, we keep the other flow going. I'm assuming there are improvements to the public realm that MSG have either committed to already in their letter, but of course will resubmit for us to actually sign off on, although I'm not sure why we're not sort of being affirmative about what they've submitted. If they're submitting it as part of, as a commitment as part of the application, why they would have to resubmit these things for a chair certification, since they're part of the, I don't know if they were part officially of a revised application, but there's certainly commitments being made to help us move this process forward and to feel comfortable in this area to move it forward. But perhaps there's an answer to that. If not, it doesn't really matter. But there are public realm improvements that could potentially be impacted by a future design collaboration, which we all hope and pray for, and the public deserves, between all of these entities, that might undo perhaps some of the things that MSG is committing to now and might again in 6 months. But the 30% of the design for the future of Penn may not come. There is no actual time frame under which that must occur, right? So can we be confident that MSG is willing, whether today or 6 months from now, to follow through on these if it takes 10 years for the railroad and MSG to come to some design terms, which might involve ripping out the investment that they're making before the 30% or more of the percentage of the design occurs?
Yes, absolutely. So I think we've discussed this before, where we don't want MSG to spend $10 million on improvements that then have to be ripped up in a couple years. So there is flexibility built into the resolution. So there's also some flexibility related to waterproofing, because one thing that was highlighted to us was that Amtrak is trying to waterproof the ground there. So, and one of the first proposal that they had, MSG had, is a paving scheme, new pavers and pigmented concrete. So that perfectly aligns with the idea that you wouldn't put that in and then rip it up in 1 year because they need to waterproof it. So we want to avoid that.
Sure, and I understand that it's a matter of principle. There's no question. That's like the right hand not working with the left hand. That's like paving a street and having Con Ed rip it up 2 weeks later. Like, we all know that typical dynamic that makes no sense to the public, is a waste of everyone's money. But at the same time, my real focus in asking that question was that we don't want all of the improvements to the public realm to be, I don't want to use the term held hostage, but I just did, not to occur because of all the potential of what the future design may be that might undo these possible immediate improvements for the community in and around.
Can I jump in on this? Because I think that's a really important point. And I think the way that we have structured this is to ensure that that does not happen by requiring MSG to proceed. Now. The public should not have to wait. We've waited far too long to improve the pedestrian experience around Penn Station MSG. We want to see these improvements in the near term. We have no control as to when the rail agencies will have a 30% design complete.
Agreed.
That could happen in a year. It could happen in 7 years. It could happen in 9.5 years. It could happen never. We don't know, and we don't have control over that. We expect that it's coming. It feels like it's coming. But we did not want to wait, and MSG understands that we do not want to wait. So we defined it this way so as to deliver improvements to the public now, and they are not the end result of all improvements that should exist around Penn Station and MSG, because those will largely be done as part of a grand reconstruction project regardless of which plan is embraced and, you know, how it all turns out. But we did not think that we should wait for that, and we thought that there are improvements that MSG should make now, and that's what this list represents. I don't know if that's helpful. I'm sorry I did jump in, but I just wanted to make that point. I think Susan's coming to add one additional point. So when Susan walks to the mic, you know that I've said something wrong or...
No, you said everything right. I just wanted to make two additional points. These are commitments that Madison Square Garden has made, but the commission resolution requires that these happen. So they're not just commitments, but they're actual requirements of the approval, and they're all spelled out as requirements. And then they all need to be completed within 2 years, regardless of what happens with that. There is this one little out that if there is other work going on, like waterproofing, that, you know, that some of it may need to be, 2 years, you have to get the waterproofing done. But it's basically, it's not about waiting for the improvements to the Penn Station. This has to be done in 2 years, all of these things.
And I'm very glad to hear that. I mean, I could think of if in 2 years we're seeing the 30% of the design, I'm not sure that's likely, which changes the entire 8th Avenue frontage, then why would, then there's a timing issue. So I like that flexibility. I was just concerned that it would just become, well, we don't know what's going to happen yet, and if we put this in and we have to rip it out, and then the community doesn't get any benefits.
And that's not, as Dan says, that's not the structure. It's like, these are separate, these have to happen.
Understood.
Regardless. There's 2 years, and that's the outside date. Some of these can be done a lot quicker than that.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Susan, and thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold?
Thanks. And Stephen, I'd echo that. No, you've been working really hard on this for some time, so nice work. The 30% stuck with me a little bit, too. The reason that when we think about design development as a threshold, who's to say what 30% really is? So do we have maybe some benchmarks, or maybe we should think about writing in their benchmarks of at what point they come forward, because candidly, they may see 30% as a different point than the rail agency, and we may see 30% differently too. So just curious if there's a way, and I'm really just thinking about this from a compliance standpoint of simplifying it and making sure that everything seems to be negotiable and arguable. So, can we make things more clear for everyone by, perhaps picking a couple of benchmarks there? Maybe it's completed plans or, something.
Sure. So, when we spoke with the rail agencies about this, we asked them specifically about the 30% design, and they gave us a whole slew of their own projects that proceeded along with this idea of 30% design development. We talked about Tappan Zee Bridge. They talked about some of the Metro North stations. And then we consulted other city agencies, and they were like, this is completely standard, normal, wasn't anything unusual about it. And I think the tension there is more, as you witnessed at the public hearing, is MSG is saying, we don't have enough information. Clearly, they might not have enough information now at this point, but then there's the question of, are they going to say that when the rail agency says that we have 30% design? But that's also something that's going to be discussed with city planning and the commission, and we will have different people consulting with us about whether that 30% design standard works, and whether the rail agencies are asking too much or not enough, or MSG is refusing to do something, or they're okay with it. So I think we have built into the system that the review of the 30% design and then the review by the commission of the modification will give everybody that information about what the different parties think about it.
I would also add that for non-ULERT modifications, the typical thing we see to have enough information to know what's actually being modified on the site plan, if we have, we've had non-ULERT mods recently, is at 30%. It's a conceptual thing. It's not like a detailed drawing of, what exactly goes where, but it is just like these are the waivers that we're going to need, or this is how it's impacting the findings. And so it also comports with our history of this type of action for a non-ULERT modification. But I will also add that any modification to this site plan whether or not it is because of a 30% design will require some kind of modification. So if they were like, put in the things, and then later, before they have 30% design, they want to tear things out, as I think Commissioner Cirillo said, that would require some kind of review.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more thinking about it from the standpoint of, I guess what we're saying is, and we've seen, I guess, front row, how the parties interact, right? And so, you know, I guess if we agree that it's on the rail agencies to say it's a 30% and we accept that being the 30% mark, then, you know, I guess that's okay. It's just, you know, I could see both sides, you know, saying, yeah, it's 30. No, it's not 30. Maybe it's 22, you know? So just, you know, as I say, I would think about having something in there that really is a triggering, but, you know, I can certainly live with the 30. And the second just quick question, because I think I know the answer, is on the loading side, there was something in there that loosely referenced the footbridge, but basically sounds like there's nothing on the table for adjusting that as a potential solution for loading or for the traffic. So are we seeing that as a closed door at this point?
We see that, we have in the CPC report a mention of improving the internal loading areas for MSG. We've gotten certain information from different entities that, you know, MSG says they can't do anything with the PED bridge and they can't get trucks in, but somehow with the ASTM proposal, trucks can get into their arena. So that raises some questions. We would like to see those improvements made, but I think we're focusing more on whatever larger improvements for that, because I think that would be a significant capital cost to do anything with the PED bridge, which is why one of the proposals is not to do anything with the PED bridge and just have them go inside.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dweck?
Thank you. Going back to the 2-year plan, does the chair have the flexibility to delay the 2-year plan? I know, you know, what's for us is a 10-year special permit, and we don't know what the council is going to do. Perhaps there might be negotiations that are ongoing fairly quickly to get the rail and transit improvements done. So does the chair have the flexibility to delay the 2 years based on his assessment of the ongoing negotiations? And
No, he only has the ability to delay it related to that waterproofing issue.
So I think it would be good practice for us to perhaps put in the ability for the chair to delay it based on gauging the negotiations and discussions between the rail agencies and MSG. I certainly trust the chair, so.
Let's ask what the limitations might be, if any, for doing something like that, and we can do that now or we can explore it after, but I think that it's a reasonable question as to what would be the provision for offering more time. Is it a matter of just, you know, is it after the 2-year period that the commissioner is asking about? This is not in the certification part of the process.
Right.
So lay that out for us as to how that would work as a practical matter.
So I believe that we could add some text if it's within scope of what we've been looking at. So there might be some scope issues. There's going to be scope issues with City Council if they make any mods also. But I think that's something I guess we could discuss related to making, giving more flexibility.
It'll certainly help negotiations between both parties if they didn't invest all that money yet into the improvements.
I think we could give the chair a little bit more flexibility. We hadn't actually thought it necessary, given that, you know, the desire to do improvements now on the public realm. And as a matter of practicality, the design for the railroad improvements are really maybe just beginning right now. And so 30% design is probably a year or 2 years, and then there's 100% design, and then there's construction drawings and starting the, you know, getting all the funding. So there's a ways before anything that happens at the at the improvements to the, the real structural improvements are actually going to impact what's happening around the garden.
I guess the question is, how do we keep some flexibility in case the council comes back with something that wasn't originally planned for?
Well, the council can come back with certain things and if they're within scope, they can do it. And so we'd have to wait to see, I don't know, what they might come back with, like additional requirements. Presumably, we'd want to know that they could be done within the 2-year time frame, whatever that might be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kermani?
Thank you, and thank you so much for all the work. Just as I'm listening, and it's so complicated, and 2 years, 30%, all of this stuff, and MSG hasn't provided, because they don't know yet, like a phased design plan, like what's going to happen first, what's going to happen second, is that something, and I'm thinking both in terms of a communication tool to the public, since this is such a hot issue, and also a communication tool for us, and I'm sure there will be a work plan, there'll be a million work plans, but can we ask for kind of a simple, dare I say, but as they begin to decide what to do first, what would a phased design plan be in the 2 years, even if it changes, but something that we can look at and say, and the public can also be a tool that can be used to communicate with the public that says, like, I'm oversimplifying, planters going in now. Next thing is this. And then if it changes, that can just a simple tool so that folks know what's going on. And then it also requires that of MSG to provide that. So the department doesn't have to scramble to figure out how to do that, but how do we take the conversation we're having and simplify it into a communication tool for both us and the public?
So part of the requirement in the resolution is for an implementation plan.
Right.
So we expect anything that comes back related to the future transit improvements will have details, because you all have to make a determination.
Right. So,
and then if you feel like they're lacking details, then you could request details.
Okay.
But we think that their implementation schedule is required.
Right.
So that's in there.
Yep.
And then if hopefully they would be having negotiations and figuring things out about how to work through this stuff related to the design issues. And of course, we don't want to be involved in any of their business negotiations.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking too, like, I don't know, just something that's like, what's going on at MSG? This is happening. I mean, I'm probably thinking too detail-oriented, but this is complicated, and the public is going to want to know what's...
Sure. So, I mean, I think if this is approved, we'll be seeing in 6 months, and the Manhattan office will be seeing MSG and DOT and, regularly over the next 6 months, because we'll have plans, and then that'll be advancing, and we'll be talking with the rail agencies too. So, for example, the sign that they're proposing, the glass canopy for Penn Station, that's for Amtrak. And Amtrak has to have an opinion on that. So they have to be involved with that too. So it's intermingled, I think was the term, or intertwined.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Back to me. There's also, just to answer Commissioner Kermani, 10 years ago, the city council also required that MSG set up a community, I wouldn't call it planning, but a group made of community people who they reported to on a regular basis as to what was going on. So it might well be that the council will do that again. I mean, the last one, council members were on it, and members of the community board, et cetera, were on and they've done that pretty regularly with big projects. But bringing up that question of the council again, the 6 months for different things, when does that start? When we approve it or when the council approves it?
When the council approves.
So it's 6 months from when the council approves it. Okay. Back to the 30%, I'm still not certain what the 30% design, is it conceptual designs? Is it working design? Clearly it can't be working designs if it's going to be done in any short period of time. What is it that we're really expecting? 30% of what?
You're just about to say, 30% design is an industry standard for a stage in design development. It is contractual. So there will be a point where the rail agencies have a 30% design with the designers who are now on board. So this is not an arbitrary marker or one really up for debate. If like MSG, I think earlier a commissioner asked, MSG could debate, when the 30% design point is. Well, frankly, no, they cannot, because it is a point it's an industry standard of a point in a contract.
Okay. And what happens if the rail agencies don't agree? New Jersey Transit says, I don't like that plan. It doesn't work for us. And Amtrak says, we think it's great. So is it, I know that in the discussion in the special permit, it does say the rail agencies have to agree to this. What if they don't? What if they don't all agree? What if one is a holdout? I mean, right now, Phil Murphy is saying that they're not going to agree to anything until we do away with congestion pricing.
Well, frankly, if there's no agreement, then the rail agencies are not advancing a plan to MSG and then therefore to the city, to city planning. So, I'm optimistic that there will be a plan. We are at a different stage than we were at 10 years ago. There is, a master plan for a major redevelopment of the rail station. There, as Stephen mentioned, there's funding for Gateway. There's a lot of expectation and tension. There's been also a lot of move by the private sector, by property owners in the area. This area does need, a major improvement, and it looks like, things are really happening. As the chair mentioned, it certainly feels like, this is going to happen. Of course, we need more than feelings, which is why there is a 30% design marker that is placed in this special permit requirement.
So in other words, no agreement, no 30%, no trigger.
No rehab of Penn Station.
No rehab of Penn Station, and, but we need them to come to an agreement in order to proceed. So we're all rooting for them to get to that very important place so that we can get that grand new Penn Station, and also we have the opportunity to revisit this question about MSG's compatibility.
And what happens when they submit to the department their 30% plans? What is the next step?
The department reviews the plans, the commission reviews the plans, comes to an understanding of...
Does the commission review them? In what way?
To review that, whatever the submission is.
This would be a non-ULURP modification, essentially, is how we'd look at it, is that the MSG would submit documents attesting to how they're would in the future still meet the findings of the special permit, given the revised site plan, which would be the 30% documents that we'd receive from the MTA or from the rail agencies. So, and that would go through a process. We refer those out to the community board. They come back usually 60 days, and then there is an assent by show of hands to send a letter to the Department of Buildings that, that this is a non-ULURP modification to a site plan that, is approved.
I mean,
Or not. Or not, which, you know,
It
there's
just
still a
seems like this
discretionary
is-
action.
that 30% mark and the plans will become the subject of a large debate and hearing and process that it doesn't feel like we're anticipating what's going to happen and the amount of public debate there needs to be if this is essentially the first time the public is going to see the proposed new Penn Station.
So there's no public hearing associated with it, so,
Yeah.
but there's also no clock associated with it. So the commission can have meeting after meeting after meeting discussing it, to iron out the details and get all your questions answered and ascertain whether MSG and the rail agencies, who's making a good argument on certain issues and how it fits together.
And I would also add that the term of 10 years, which, you know, you were saying it's 2-3 years for 30%, then we have it just that there would probably be another bite at the apple with a renewal, with a new special permit, after 10 years. And it seems unlikely that they would be completed with their new Penn Station prior to the lapse of this current special permit. My experience with building mega projects, don't just happen like that quickly.
But you would expect, and this is my last question this one, you would expect that at the 30% stage, MSG would come back with drawings for proposed modifications of their site plans in accordance with the 30% drawings that have been submitted by MSG, by
the rail agencies, yes.
Is that?
Because the rail agencies are all on the same zoning lot as MSG, right? So it's all one zoning lot, and you change one part of the zoning lot, that triggers the review.
For anything that's on the special permit use. So anything that's below grade, so one of the proposals is to remove one of the levels below grade, which the rail agencies have agreed upon. So they're in agreement on that improvement. But how those entrances and exits into Penn Station get out onto MSG property, that's an issue. And obviously you've seen how the proposals are doing something with the mid-block driveway, that's MSG property.
Right.
So if you're going to do something there, you
And
have
would
to get
2
MSG.
Penn Plaza have to come back if the entrances were changed on that side of the property
If it,
as a modification of their special permit?
it depends on where it goes onto their property. So what they control is straight down from their own building. And MSG has that right up to their, I can't remember the exact measurement, but it's really, really close to their building. So I don't think that would impact Vornado. But however, what does impact Vornado is their loading, because they load on the south end of the mid-block driveway. So anything that takes away their loading operations, they don't do much loading there. They do it mainly over on 1 Penn, but that still would be impacting their loading operations.
Well, where is the loading for all of the retail that's below grade? How do they get their stuff?
It depends on who's got the retail. So Amtrak uses the southern internal entrance into the arena. They have that internal bay.
Right.
Trucks park on the street, if they're coming in and out quickly. If it's MSG and they have smaller trucks, they can go on into the building. And then Vornado, Vornado's been talking about how they're going to get some of their retail sites going. That would probably go through 1 Penn, because they have a nice loading facility below that building.
And the underground retail that's in Penn Station, how do they get?
So they would use the internal loading bays of inside the arena, because Amtrak controls the southern entrance access into the loading bay, the internal loading bay at the arena.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Knuckles.
You know, I recall the governor announcing a few weeks ago that an RFP would be issued, presumably, I guess, through the MTA for a design of Penn Station. This process, ours, the city's process, CPC City Council, is not impervious, right, to that dynamic. What, Stephen, in your opinion, well, you know, not your sole opinion, obviously, but I mean, how do you see this impacting, how do you see that RFP and any designations coming out of that and any concepts coming out of that impacting what we do here at CPC as well as a city council?
So I'm not familiar with the RFP because the rail agencies have executed a contract with the designer for the 30% design for the rehab of Penn Station. I'm not sure what particular RFP that one's for. I know the governor made a statement about the GPP that had some potentially conflicting information in the announcement. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, or the Empire Station complex that's still within the GPP on sites 1, 2, and 3 of the GPP, which is south of Madison Square Garden, where they're proposing the new train station.
Not that one, the former, where there was a call for an RFP, and I know that there has been there had been a prior designation of a firm to do some design, and then the subsequent announcement did call into question, well, what about what's going on under the current designation?
Sure. So I'll look into that because I'm not sure exactly what the details are of that RFP.
Yeah.
But whatever affects the site plan for MSG, which is what you're all reviewing, and all those things that affect the arena use, that would impact whatever MSG does on their site plan. And any modifications from any other proposal, that would then have to be approved by the commission.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Okay, with that, thank you again, Stephen, for your attention to this over a very, very long period of time. We appreciate it. This will be up for a vote before this commission on Wednesday. We thank everybody for their attention and comments. And Ryan, let's move on to the normally scheduled agenda here, or the certifications on the list.
So the second item on our agenda is the certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Staten Island Community District 1, and our presenter is Kari Bailey.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners and Chair Roddick. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. We can hear you fine.
Great. Yeah, so my name is Kari Bailey. I'm the Staten Island Borough Planner, and I'm presenting 541545 Bay Street, which is a rezoning and extension of the Special Bay Street Corridor District, also known as BSC for short. Next slide, please. So this is in Staten Island Community District 1, which is the Stapleton neighborhood. A private applicant, Epsilon Enterprises Realty, LLC, is requesting the following actions. 1, a zoning map amendment rezoning their development site and the surrounding properties from a C4-2 to an R6 C2-3. Secondly, a zoning text amendment to make the affected area part of the special Bay Street corridor. And thirdly, a zoning text amendment to make the affected area part of mandatory inclusionary housing. And lastly, amendments to the bulk provisions of the special Bay Street corridor, which affects primary street frontage and height regulations for a particular block. And these actions would facilitate the proposed development of an 8-story mixed-use building with 10,000 square feet of ground floor commercial, 81 residential units above, 24 which would be affordable, and a rear parking lot would provide 42 on-site spaces. Next slide, please. So the Special Bay Street Corridor District was adopted in June of 2019. The goals of the district include creating a vibrant, resilient downtown, providing stronger connections to New York Harbor and the surrounding neighborhoods, supporting the creation of new housing, including affordable housing for a wide range of North Shore residents. It also aims to foster new and existing businesses and commercial development by encouraging job creation with pedestrian-friendly retail commercial corridor between St. George and Stapleton. And lastly, the goals of this district are also aligning investments in infrastructure, public open spaces, and services in the Bay Street corridor to support current demands and future growth. So this project would extend the pedestrian-friendly commercial bulk rules of the corridor 1 block south to Prospect Street. Next slide, please. So the full rezoning area is outlined in the dotted red box on this map, which abuts the Staten Island Railroad in the dotted yellow line. And the site itself is between Sand Street to the left and Prospect Street to the right. There are at least 5 bus lines outlined in blue that go through the Bay Street corridor. And the development site itself is a strategic location because the main street of Stapleton and the special Stapleton waterfront district intersect. And this crucial juncture includes immediate access to bus and rail transit. It links the affected area with St. George and communities further south and west in Staten Island. The nearest Staten Island Railroad station is Stapleton, which is across the street from the development site. The 5 bus route stops are within less than a 5-minute walk from the site. A bus from this area to the St. George Ferry Terminal is about a 10-minute ride. And the site is within minutes from the Staten Island Waterfront Park and Esplanade, and consequently is in the flood zone. Nearby points of interest include Tappan Park, the Wu-Tang Clan Mural, Stapleton Public Library, Makerspace NYC, and the Canal Street Waterfront Observation Deck. And in this image, you can actually see the recent Irby development, which is that U-shaped building along the waterfront. And this started its phase 1 in 2016, and that development is comprised of 571 apartments, 35,000 square feet of ground floor retail, an urban farm, common spaces, 600 parking spaces, and a public plaza. Next slide, please. So in this map, you can see the L-shaped development site, which is outlined in red, and the entire rezoning area is outlined in a dotted black line. In terms of surrounding development and built form, the immediate area is diverse in uses and building types. And in terms of uses, the immediate area contains a mix of older warehouse, low-rise commercial and manufacturing uses, as well as newer mixed-use and residential buildings. To the south and east of the site, near the special Stapleton Waterfront District, you can see that it's zoned a C4-2 and a C4-2A, which is a contextual district that allows commercial and residential uses. To the west of the site is predominantly lower scale residential and is zoned in R3-2 and an R3-2 with a C1-2 commercial overlay. And this includes uses in the surrounding area include churches, restaurants, home goods stores, and more local shopping. Next slide, please. As you can see here, the existing use of 541-545 Bay Street is the Bay Street Bazaar convenience store, which also contains a catering facility up top. So the first image you're seeing on the screen is the view of the storefront and Prospect Street facing east from Bay Street, and the development site is to the left. So to the right of this picture, you can see what the existing building looks like across the street on Prospect Street. And the second image you're seeing to the right is a view of the development site facing northeast from the intersection of Bay Street and Prospect Street. And you can see what the building directly next to the development site looks like here. And you can also notice in this picture that the existing storefront is located within the street bed of Bay Street. And this is resulting in a reduction of width of the 80-foot map street in this segment. The proposed development would realign with the map width and be set back out of the street bed. Next slide, please. This shows views of Prospect Street, where the site connects to the Staten Island Railway Stapleton stop, and where there's a connection to the Stapleton waterfront if you keep going down a few blocks from here. So the first image to the left is a view of Prospect Street facing west, with the development site to the right. And the second image is to the right is a view of the south side of Prospect Street facing southeast from the development site. And here you can see the Stapleton Staten Island rail stop. Next slide, please. Sand Street dead ends with the Staten Island Railway, and this shows a view of Sand Street facing east with the project area development site to the right. That white building that you're seeing to the right is part of the rezoning area, but it would likely remain as is since it's too small to develop. Next slide, please. So in the site plan, Bay Street is to the left. The L-shaped development site is highlighted in light blue. The existing building is to be demolished to the left, which you can see what the existing building looks like because it's in the darker gray dotted shading. And to the left of this existing building, you can notice the Bay Street widening line that I previously mentioned. And any proposed development would need to set back this widening line and align it with the adjacent existing buildings. The proposed development would have an 8-story building fronting Bay Street, a 6-story building fronting Prospect Street, and a 6-story building facing Sand Street. The total zoning area is 8,448 square feet with 81 housing units, 10,000 square feet of commercial on the ground floor, and 8,740 square feet of parking in the rear for 42 cars. Next slide, please. Here you can get a better idea of the building setbacks and the number of stories in the L-shaped configuration. And you can see also that most of the building is fronting on Prospect Street. And this building is in the coastal floodplain and it would be built to necessary standards for floodproofing, especially for the ground floor commercial. The two charts to the left show what the bulk and height would be for the Bay Street corridor new district F, highlighted in yellow, in relation to the existing sub-districts. The top chart shows the maximum base heights and building heights for each sub-district. The new highlighted F district is similar to District C, and the bottom chart shows the maximum FAR for each sub-district. You can see that the FAR is similar to District B. And you may be asking yourself, then why wouldn't they just merge with another already existing sub-district? Well, because sub-districts A, B, and C only allow maximum height within 100 feet of Bay Street. So that would mean that most of the L-shaped lot would be restricted. And sub-districts D and E don't allow for a feasible development due to their FAR and bulk rules. So in the end, a new sub-district F was determined to be created in order to address these issues and provide more density adjacent to the Staten Island Railroad, which is the main rationale for more development on this site. So having a new sub-district allowed for the necessary customizations needed for the L-shaped site to have proper setbacks, FAR, street walls, and having Prospect Street as the primary frontage. Next slide, please. This is a view of the development site on Prospect Street. So the ground floor of this rendering notes some flooding mitigation measures, including flood barriers and insulated tempered glass. And you can see in the blue dashed line, the building includes resilient design standards to acknowledge the 13-foot design flood elevation. And overall, this drawing details the proposed elevation and street wall. A maximum street wall of 65 feet would be required, with the building overall maximum height is capped at 8 stories or 85 feet, which is consistent with the recently constructed mid-rise mixed and residential buildings in the area. The Bay Street corridor's bulk rules encourage a pedestrian-friendly corridor with a required non-residential ground floor along Bay Street and Prospect Streets. Also, the quality housing bulk requirements require a more uniform street wall with a maximum permitted height. This street, Prospect Street, serves as an important pedestrian connection and access to the waterfront. Next slide, please. Moving on to the proposed actions for this project, the first one includes a zoning map amendment to rezone the area from a C4-2 to an R6 C2-3. The zoning map to the left is the existing, and the zoning map to the right is the proposed. This rezoning would up the residential FAR by 0.6 and lower the commercial FAR. Next slide, please. The second and third project actions include a zoning text amendment to add sub-area F as part of the Special Bay Street Corridor District and add the area to mandatory inclusionary housing. In the L-shaped development site, it is proposed to use MIH option 1, which would provide 24 affordable units and 57 market rate. However, option 2 and the workforce option would also be mapped in the larger rezoning area. And in option 2 or the workforce option scenario, 25 of the apartments would be made permanently affordable with the remaining 56 to be market rate. And the final zoning action is a text amendment to the bulk provisions of the Special Bay Street Corridor affecting primary street frontage and height regulations for a particular block, which I previously mentioned. Next slide, please. This project requires a racial equity report done by the applicant. And this shows an overview of the race and ethnicity in the community district compared to Staten Island and New York City as a whole. This chart suggests that the Staten Island Community District is mainly comprised of a white and Hispanic Latino population, making up 64% combined, following a 21% Black population and 11% Asian population. The district's ratios is on par with the rest of New York City, which you can see in the rightmost bar chart. Despite Staten Island having the largest white population, and this community district being majority white at 33%, the community district appears to be more racially diverse than the rest of Staten Island as a whole. Next slide, please. These charts show the percent change in race and ethnicity from 2010 to 2020. The darkest bar represents the community district, the second darkest bar represents Staten Island as a whole, and the lightest bar represents New York City. These charts suggest that the total population went up by 8% in the community district and New York City, compared to 6% for Staten Island as a whole. In this community district, the Asian population went up by 57%, the Black population went up by 4%, and the Hispanic population went up by 18%, which are all similar to Staten Island as a whole. The white population declined by 10% in this district and declined 7% in Staten Island as a whole. This could suggest that Staten Island as a whole is getting more diverse, and this district is a good representative of that. Next slide, please. This map shows displacement risk. The project area is in a light pink area, which indicates a lower displacement risk, but it's not the lowest. The average median household income in this Staten Island Community District is $69,408. The chart to the right shows the affordable housing unit breakdown. A total of 81 units are to be provided, with 57 being market rate and 24 affordable. Of the 21 that are affordable, 8 would be considered very low income, 11 would be low income, and 5 would be moderate income. This allows for a wide variety of income levels. The estimated rent of the affordable units ranges between $1,400 and $2,080. It's for household incomes of about $56,000 to $86,500. And I should note that the income ranges to household size are based on a household size range of between 1 to 4 people, and the rent ranges from studios to 3 bedrooms. Next slide, please. So in summary, Epsilon Enterprises Realty LLC requests the following actions. 1, a zoning map amendment to rezone their development site and the surrounding properties from a C4-2 to an R6 C2-3. Secondly, a zoning text amendment to make the affected area part of the Special Bay Street Corridor District. Thirdly, a zoning text amendment to make the affected area part of the mandatory inclusionary housing. And lastly, amendments to the bulk provisions of the Special Bay Street Corridor affecting primary street frontage and height regulations for a particular block. This would facilitate a new mixed-use development at 541-545 Bay Street, which is located along the east side of Bay Street between Sands and Prospect Streets in the Stapleton neighborhood of Staten Island Community District 1. The proposed development includes 98,448 square feet of zoning floor area, 10,000 which would be commercial, and it would stand at 81 feet in height, 8 stories, and would contain 81 residential apartments, 24 under the MIH option to be affordable, and a rear lot with 42 parking spaces. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that. Before I go to Commissioner Cerullo, just one question from me. As you noted, this is an effort to include this area as part of the Special Bay Street Corridor District. Just interested in knowing why it was not included in the first go-around.
Yeah, that's a good question. So they actually, this is before my time, this property owner actually approached the Department of City Planning asking to be included, but it was already way too far along in the process to include them. And also the purpose of the Special Bay Street Corridor was mainly looking at manufacturing districts, and the zoning of this area was not a manufacturing district, so they weren't included in the initial look.
Okay. And the relief here, the bulk provisions for primary street frontage and the height regulations, can you just spend one more minute just explaining what the relief would be here that would enable this development?
Mm-hmm. So as part of the sub-districts of the Special Bay Street Corridor, it allows for a maximum height within 100 feet of the Bay Street. And because this site is in an L shape, they would be very restricted on what they could build, and it would not be feasible. So to allow for them to build the way that to make it more feasible, they are seeking this to address those issues.
Okay. All right. Let me go to Commissioner Cerullo.
Thank you, Chair. Kari, thank you for the presentation. I'm gonna whip through a couple of quick questions that come to mind. You referred on page 6 when you talked about the building setback, or actually you mentioned it in a slide on page 4, that the building was built into the street bed, and I know the building to the north of it is I'm thinking of it as being set back from this existing building, which will be demolished. But is that actually the street bed, or it's built into the side, deeper into the sidewalk? Like, you used the term built in the street bed. Is that really the street bed? If
Well,
you go
yeah.
back to slide 4, I definitely understand that the building line is at the sidewalk, but are we saying that the mapped street of Bay Street at this point actually incorporates the sidewalk too, but we're only going back to set it back as far as the building north of it? Go back to 4 for a minute. Oh, this is 4. Go to 6. I made a note. I think that's the real life picture. Okay, so if you look at the picture to our right, that's the building that's going to come down. You referred to that as being in the street bed. The building to the north of it, which is that newer residential building, is set back. It's hard to tell in this picture, but it's actually set back. So are we considering where this building now is technically in the street bed or just built on the sidewalk? I'm confused by that.
Yeah, well, technically it looks that way, and it is that way, but in the record of the map, it is considered to be the street bed.
So then could we assume that even this, yeah.
I was saying, it existed probably before it kind of got grandfathered in, yeah.
So what we're really saying is that the sidewalk is in the street bed as well. It's just not built to the actual mapped width of the street. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that because I know it's going to match the building to the north of it from a sidewalk point of view and a setback, which I agree with completely. So I just wanted to understand that. Is there any... there are going to be 3 buildings as part of this development. Will they have different addresses given that their frontage, I'm assuming one's on Prospect, one's on Sand, and one's on Bay? So will they have 3 different addresses?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I kind of thought it would just be the project, but I'll look into it and get back.
Sure. And 2 are sort of public realm related. Based on this, one has to do with the Stapleton Station, which is now serving directly the residents of the Irby, and now potentially this new development. Has there been any discussion with the MTA or any other relevant agency to do any work to improve the Stapleton Station for those who would be using it? You had a photo of the station on Prospect, maybe a slide or 2 later. I don't remember what slide that. Yeah, I mean this is this is it, and I just wonder if there's been any discussion with what can be done to improve this station, given the increase in residential development and use that's going to be part of this. Never mind people who are encouraging to get out of their cars and come and eat in the restaurants in this area, that this is actually a really great location for the stop. I just wonder if any of those conversations have taken place.
I'm not aware of any conversations that have taken place, but I can look into it and get back to you.
That would be terrific. And the other is about the Sand Street, where you mentioned, obviously, that's not part of the site, but Sand is the dead end because of the sort of base of the Staten Island Railroad. I think that was that. I mean, this is now going to be the block with an entrance of a residential building. And I wonder if there's been any conversations with anyone, whether it's the city, the MTA, who likely owns the land underneath this, to do anything, even if it cannot be opened, which clearly seems to be the case, just based upon the sort of the elevated train here. But is there some other improvement that can be made on this block that could serve the community in a better way as we look to improve public spaces for people who are living in the neighborhoods? These are more sort of thought questions to see if there's been any discussion about what can be done at the end of this block.
Yeah, I'm sure in the project files there was discussions with MTA, but I don't know how far they went. So
Okay, it might be interesting to be following up with the MTA at some point about what they may be willing to do, or if there are any projects in the pipeline already in this area, given the expected growth just from the Bay Street corridor rezoning. Be interested in knowing that. And the very last question that I have at this point, and obviously we'll be anxious to hear about, the community's point of view on this, is we had, as the chair asked, there was the Bay Street corridor rezoning. It went to a block north of this, basically. And now we're extending the Bay Street corridor geography to include this corner. We're also mapping MIH here.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that necessary if we're extending the Bay Street corridor geography, which is already mapped? Is it because of the new sub-area? Like, wouldn't it, if we're extending, or are they two separate, we need to do two separate actions? One is to map the geography of the corridor, and the other is to extend the MIH into this sub-area.
It's two separate. Yeah,
Two separate.
I mean, it's all under the same text action, but it's two separate parts of it.
So we have to do the two separate.
Yeah.
Okay, and I like it because I like the options in this one better than the first one, which is where we started in the first one. But I just wanted to understand why just the extension didn't incorporate everything that had been done in the first part, but it makes sense. All right, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kari.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, thank you very much, Kari. This item is now certified. Let's move on to the next, Ryan.
Okay, the third item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 7, and our presenter is Hai-Kyung Yang.
Hello. Good, how are you? Good. Almost there.
We'll get the presentation up shortly. Don't know what's going on. It's on YouTube. I don't know. There we go.
Great, thank you. This is a private application by Marmar Realty LLC for a zoning map amendment from an M11 zoning district to an R7A zoning district, as well as a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area in the Flushing College Point border of Queens Community District 7. The proposed actions would facilitate the development of a new 9-story residential building with 415 residential dwelling units, of which approximately 113 will be affordable units with approximately 200 parking spaces. The proposed development includes a publicly accessible area, a PAA, in the rear of development, which will be recorded against the property through a project component related to the environment associated with the proposed actions seeker review. This map represents the existing land use and zoning in the surrounding area. The project area was mapped as a M11 at the inception of the 1961 zoning resolution. It has remained as M11 since that time. Development site is highlighted in the dashed bold black and arrow and is bound by Whitestone Expressway to the north, Linden Place to the east, and Farrington Street to the west. Surrounding the project area is composed of a varied mixture of land uses, including residential, commercial, and light manufacturing, shown in the yellows, reds, and purple colors. The area immediately to the north of the Whitestone Expressway was rezoned in 2009 as part of a zoning map amendment that created the Special College Point District. The special district was established to encourage and retain high performance manufacturing establishments and maintain the business campus environment with landscape yards while preserving residential uses and the College Point neighborhood character that pre-existed the special district and still exists today. To the south of the project area, closer to downtown Flushing, 2 private rezoning applications were approved in 2010 and 2017. The first, called the 35th Avenue rezoning, was adopted in July of 2010. This is the area in the middle, bottom of the screen, labeled as R6 with an asterisk. This rezoning amended an area from N11 to R6C22. The proposed rezoning was intended to facilitate an 11-story mixed-use building to contain residential, community facility, and residential use, retail uses. The rezoning facilitated development of the mixed-use building in 2020 and is near completion today. The second, called 13501 35th Avenue rezoning, was adopted in October of 2017. This rezoning is immediately to the east of the 35th Avenue rezoning at the northeast corner of 35th Avenue and Farrington Place, shown on the screen with the label R7A and a double asterisk, which amended an M11 district to R7A with MIH. A commercial overlay was not mapped because of the traffic concerns identified and raised by the community board. The rezoning was sought to facilitate a 9-story residential development with 93 dwelling units, 27 of which would be affordable under MIH. As noted earlier, the project site is directly adjacent and south of the Whitestone Expressway, shown in the dashed red and bold arrow. To the north, within the College Point Special District, sits the College Point Multiplex Movie Theater and Community District 7's new office space. The area to the west and south of the project site is predominantly developed with commercial and light industrial manufacturing uses. The block to the west is developed with a commercial shopping complex, the Whitestone Expressway Plaza, which comprises of an open parking area and a strip mall-style retail complex with a series of eating and drinking establishments, banks, pharmacy, and stop-and-shop grocery store. Immediately to the south of and on the same block as the project site is a 6-story commercial office building owned and operated by the City of New York, DCAS, and Department of Education. Further south of this area, around 32nd Avenue, are blocks predominantly developed with smaller residential and mixed-use properties ranging in height between 2 and 4 stories. The area immediately to the east is developed with mid-rise residential uses. To the east of the proposed project on Linden Place is the Linden Towers Co-op Park, which contains tower in the park-style housing rising to 6 stories. Levitt's Park, an open field recreational area, is located 3 blocks southeast of the project site. And lastly, the project area is located approximately 1 mile north of downtown Flushing, a transportation hub that connects eastern Queens to Manhattan to the west and Long Island to the east. The project site is adjacent to the Q25 and Q50 bus lines along Linden Place, taking riders further north or returning south to the central transportation hub. This slide is a stitched aerial of the project area. In the dashed red outline is a development site, currently the Whitestone Lanes Bowling Alley. The single-story bowling alley is approximately 37,500 square feet, with surface parking surrounding the parcel. The proposed development site is wholly located within the New York City coastal zone boundary and requires any habitable spaces to be located at 13 feet design flood elevation. This slide shows a view from the north, looking at the development site from Whitestone Expressway. This is a view towards the north along Linden Place with development site on the left and the 6-story apartment building of Linden Towers Co-op Park on the right. This is a view north along Farrington Street with the development site on the right and the 1-story commercial shopping complex, the Whitestone Expressway Plaza, to the left. Lastly, this is a view facing southeast along Farrington Street, facing the proposed public accessible open space with the adjacent 6-story DOE office building in the background. The proposed development would consist of a residential development that will rise to 9 stories and contain approximately 378,000 square feet of area at a 4.6 FAR. This would include 415 dwelling units, approximately 113 of which would be affordable pursuant to MIH option 1. The building would rise to a maximum height of 95 feet and set back at the 7th floor following varied setbacks along Linden Place, the Whitestone Expressway, and Farrington Street fronts. The proposed development would also provide approximately 200 spaces below ground for parking, along with 200 spaces for bicycle parking. Lastly, development would provide an approximately 14,000 square feet of publicly accessible open space. In elevation, the proposed building would rise to the height of 75 feet and then sit back 10 feet and rise 2 more stories for a total of 95 feet in height. Parking for approximately 200 cars would be provided in the cellar, along with 200 bicycle parking spaces. As noted earlier, development site is in the flood zone. The first habitable floor in the proposed development will be located above the floor plane elevation and follow DOB Appendix 3 regulations for flood protection. The overall site plan shows the entrance of the residential lobby along Farrington Street. 2 curb cuts along Linden Place and Farrington Street are located on the site for parking at the cellar level. Cars would be able to enter both entrances, but would be required to exit from Farrington Street, drawing traffic away from Linden Place. There are approximately 36 residential units located on the first floor, along with an interior courtyard that would feature private open space with a garden area including seating and planting for the residences of the building. The frontage of the development site would include 27 new street trees, and shown at the bottom right of this plan, a publicly accessible area would be provided at the Farrington Street and 31st Road corner of the block, roughly aligning with the dimensions of Lot 1. The publicly accessible area, zoomed here in the green, has been designed with several sections of activity in mind. This open space is incorporated as part of the development and will be memorialized in a restrictive deck as a project component related to the environment. In this specific illustrative proposal, the applicant proposes to have the PAA contain active and passive open spaces, including a range of tree planting and seating. Passive areas would consist of seating and a community garden, while active areas would include fitness equipment and ping pong tables. The space would have hop-slide components, which include signage indicating open hours, lighting, trash receptacles, and seating requirements. As the adjacent DOB building rests at a higher elevation, screening would be provided where the 2 lots meet, as shown on the far right, section B. To facilitate this development, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment to change from an N11 district to an R7A district, indicated by the dotted black line on the image on the right. R7A districts produce buildings at a 95 feet or 9-story scale. The transition from an M11 to an R7A district allows an increase in residential floor area from none to 4.6 when including MIH units, and an increase from 2.4 community facility FAR to a 4.0 FAR. The R7A proposal will remove all commercial and manufacturing use groups allowances. The applicant also proposes a zoning text amendment to map MIH option 1 and 2 across the project area. The applicant proposes to utilize option 1 for the proposed development, yielding in 25% of residential floor area as 113 income restricted units. This application requires a racial equity report because it would increase the residential floor area by at least 50,000 square feet. The AMI for CD7, Flushing, Murray Hill, College Point, and Whitestone area is approximately $55,000, which is lower than the AMIs for the boroughs of Queens and New York City overall. The applicant proposes to provide 113 income-restricted units across a range of 40 to 80% AMI, with estimated monthly rents ranging from $1,390 for 1-bedroom units to $2,780 for two-bedroom units at an estimated average incomes ranging from approximately $57,000 for a one-person household to approximately $115,000 for a four-person household. Of the approximately 270,930 residents within the neighborhood of Flushing, Murray Hill, College Point, and Whitestone, 50% identified as Asian, 2% identified as Black, 18% identified as Hispanic Latino, and 21% identified as white. Between 2010 and 2020, the area saw an increase in the Asian population and a decrease in Black, Hispanic, Latino, and white populations. In conclusion, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment to change from an M11 district to an R7A district and to map an MIH area to facilitate the development of a new 9-story residential building with 415 units, of which approximately 113 would be made permanently affordable, with 200 parking spaces and 14,000 square feet of publicly accessible area, open space. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Question from Commissioner Rampersad.
I'll be quick. Thank you for the presentation. When this comes back to us, if they can provide the breakdown of the number of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Also, what sustainable measures are being used. I'm just curious, the 14,000 square foot public space, is that the one that's along Farrington Street?
Yes.
Is that the area there? Okay.
Yes.
And I just want to know, I guess, the thought process behind that open public area, because it seems like there's a lot squeezed in there. And like, for example, the community farm, I just want to know who's going to be operating that.
Sure.
They have a little gym set up there. I'm just curious of the thought process as opposed to putting some kind of playground equipment, because I know that other park has a lot of ball fields.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious because you're talking about 400 families, so I'm assuming there'll be children there too. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you. This item is certified. We'll look forward to seeing it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The fourth item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Manhattan Community District 11, and our presenter is Jose Trucios.
Hello, Jose.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Okay, good afternoon. In front of you, we have 226 Third Avenue. It is up for certification. This is a private application by Reed Third Avenue LLC for 3 zoning actions. The first one being a zoning map amendment to rezone the residential portion of Lot 36. 3 zoning text amendment, although it's 1, but there's modifying the zoning resolution 3 times. 1 to designate a project area under mandatory inclusionary housing. The second one to extend the boundaries of the special East Harlem Corridors District. And the third one, and last text amendment, is to establish a new zoning resolution section 13842 that will allow the reduction of required loading berths via City Planning Commission special permit. And last, the City Planning Commission special permit subject to the newly established zoning resolution section 13842. And I will get into more details of all of these actions. Approval of the actions will allow the development of a 10-story, predominantly life and science building at 226 Third Avenue and the southwest corner of East and 121st Street and Third Avenue in East Harlem Community District 11, Manhattan. The surrounding area is predominantly residential, typified with 5 to 10-story multi-dwelling and high-rise residential towers along the avenues. Primarily underlying zoning districts include C46, R72, R7A, R7B, and R7D, with commercial overlays on C14, C15, C24, and C25, map along portions of Park Avenue and Third Avenue. The zoning in the area features 3 special districts that modify the underlying zoning regulations. Immediately adjacent of the project area is the special East Harlem Corridors, which is mapped along Mayor Concourse in East Harlem. The special 125th district and special transit land use district are located a few blocks north of the project area. And additionally, within the surrounding area, inclusionary housing and mandatory inclusionary housing designated areas are mapped. These provide affordable floor area incentives to create or preserve affordable housing. The project area is also located within the fresh zone, which provides zoning and discretionary tax incentives to promote the creation of health-oriented food stores. And last, the transit zone, where lower accessory residential parking requirements apply for certain type of affordable housing. The surrounding area is very well served by public transportation. Immediately north of the project area, between Park Avenue and Lexington Avenue, is the 125th Street District, which is a major public transit hub that houses the Metro North Railroad, Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines, the 4, 5, and 6 subway lines, as well several local and express buses servicing the project area and surrounding area. Although the project area is located within the East Harlem Urban Renewal Plan, none of the properties subject to this application were identified as acquisition parcels in the urban renewal area. Therefore, none of the properties are subject to controls of the urban renewal plan. And quickly to get into a discussion of the project area versus development side, the project area has about 26,000 square feet and is comprised by 4 tax lots, including 36, 38, 39, and 40, while the development site is limited to lot 36, measuring about 18,000 square feet, and is currently being developed with a 10-story SRI building. Lot 38, 39, and 40, they all measure approximately 2,500 square feet, while lot 38 is currently occupied by a 3-story commercial and residential building. Lot 39 is occupied by a 3-story church, and lot 40 is occupied by a 4-story mixed-use commercial residential building. Except for the western portion of lot 36, the project area is located within the East Harlem Corridor Special District and is mapped with a C46 zoning district. I look to the actual project area, and this is the actual look of the building. This is looking northwest from the intersection of 3rd Avenue and East 121st Street. And now looking from 3rd Avenue between East 120 and East 121st Streets. This is a view of the development side facing east from East 121st Street. And I look at the proposed development. I mentioned that there is currently this building taken by a drone photo as last week of how the building is actually constructed. In August 2021, the Department of Buildings approved plans for the redevelopment of the development site with an SRI 10-story, 145 feet, plus rooftop mechanical equipment of 40 feet, with approximately 133,000 square feet, including 95,000 of medical office use group 4, and 36,000 of commercial use group 9. Approval of the actions will not modify the DOB approved plans. However, the proposed development program will change from a mix of medical office and commercial uses to primarily life and science type of uses. Site preparation work, including demolition of the former commercial building, began in 2021, and the construction and activity of the development site is expected to be completed by the fall of 2023. The portion of the proposed development within 100 feet of 3rd Avenue will be located at a street line and rise to a height approximately of 101 feet before setting back 10 feet from 3rd Avenue and 15 feet from East 121st Street, rising in a step pattern to a total height of approximately 145 feet. The site was previously occupied by a commercial building of 2 stories and occupied 33,000 square feet. The zoning map amendment. I mentioned that lot 36 is the western portion of lot 36 is the only portion that is now currently zoned as a C46 district. It is an R7B zoning district, and the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment to rezone this portion to a C46 and extending the boundaries of the East Harlem corridor. Here's a closer look to the amended zoning map, section CB, where that zoning boundaries have been extended, with the boundaries of the East Harlem corridor have been extended 50 feet western of the actual, the existing East Harlem corridor boundaries. The first text amendment will be to modify Article 13, Chapter A of the Special East Harlem Corridor District. This will allow, include the project's, the development site, the project area, into the what is currently map R7B with a C46 district. It will also increase the permitted commercial floor area ratio from a 3.4 to a 7.2. The text amendment to map mandatory inclusionary housing and on the development side, although the project does not include residential floor area, the MIH program will ensure that a minimum of 25% of the residential floor area in any future development that includes residential use is permanently income restricted. The text amendment established the new zoning resolution loading reduction waiver and potentially allow the applicant for the reduction in the number of the loading berths via City Planning Commission special permit. There are certain conditions related to the pedestrian safety, traffic congestion, and built environment to be satisfied in order for the applicant to be granted a special permit. This is coming from the zoning resolution 3662, the loading berth requirements, currently requiring the applicant to produce 3 loading berths on the site, and the applicant is seeking to amend the East Harlem Corridor Special District text to ensure that they can effectively reduce the number of requiring loading berths from 3 to 1. Given that right now, for example, the proposed development is about 133,000 square footage of total area, 3 loading berths are required, and through the special permit, they will be providing only 1 loading berth. The applicant, is seeking this special permit, and I mentioned the requirements that they need to meet. There is a statement of findings that has been provided within the package shared with the commission. The proposed loading berth will be located at an access via a 16-foot wide curb cut located on 3rd Avenue, which is a 100 feet street with 5 northbound traffic lanes and about 2 15-feet sidewalks in each side and 1 curb cut for parking along each curb as well. The special permit requires the conditions related to pedestrian safety, traffic, congestion, and the built environment be satisfied. And the applicant has submitted this statement of findings where they believe that 1 loading berth is sufficient to accommodate all projected demand from delivery vehicles and commits to implementing an efficient delivery system that will maximize the use of the proposed loading berth. And it's expected that curbside loading and unloading of packages, merchandise will utilize the no parking anytime zone along the 3rd Avenue curbs. The implementation plan also includes a dedicated dock master to coordinate all incoming and outgoing deliveries. The loading dock will be staffed during all hours of operation, and audio and visual warners to alert pedestrians of entering and exiting vehicles will be also implemented. Next slide. Here's a closer look of the actual loading berth that will be located on the northwest portion of 3rd Avenue. And a closer look to the amended Special East Harlem Corridor District Plan. The boundaries have been extended to include the project area development site, and the proposed C46 East Harlem Corridor District will modify the underlying C46 regulations to allow buildings with a maximum commercial FAR of 7.2. Currently, is allowing 3.4 commercial FAR. The maximum height of 230 feet applicable to this portion of the project area. The residential FAR remains the same, and the special ground floor design and parking provisions of the East Harlem Corridor will remain the same. A quick summary of the actions. The applicant is seeking 3 actions: the zoning map amendment to rezone the western portion, currently zoned residential R7B, to a C46 East Harlem Corridor District, boundaries, 3 zoning text amendment to designate the area with mandatory inclusionary housing, 1 to map a new zoning section resolution to new section within the zoning resolution to allow the reduction of loading birds, and a third one to amend the boundaries of the East Harlem Corridor Special District, and a zoning special permit to apply for the actual new newly created zoning resolution. The proposed amendment will remain very much as it is as a right, with the section that the use will change from a medical office space and commercial to a primarily life and science building, and 1 loading bear instead of 3 loading bears. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. That's a lot of stuff for a building that's pretty much built.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure that we're all clear on what's happening. So it is to change the piece of this site that is R7B to make it C46 and make it part of the East Harlem corridor, correct? And the as of right versus with this change, it is everything is the same height, number of floors, square footage, but it would require 3 loading berths, which is why we have an associated text amendment to allow for a waiver down to 1, correct?
Correct.
And it would enable use group 9A, which enables life sciences.
In the entirety of the development.
In the entirety of the whole building. Okay. Thank you. See if there's other questions, points, anything. Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it. This item is certified. Let's move on. Thank you.
Okay, the 5th item on our agenda is a post-referral review of a CPC certification in Manhattan Community District 8, and presenting for the first time to the Commission is Ali Song.
All right, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application by Manhattan Schoolhouse for a CPC certification pursuant to Section 32435C of the zoning resolution to waive a retail requirement on a wide street, allowing the ground floor to be used as a daycare facility. The site is located at 1538 2nd Avenue in the Yorkville neighborhood of Community District 8. This image shows the project context looking northeast at the development site, highlighted here in yellow. The site is located on a block bound by East 80th Street to the south, East 81st Street to the north, First Avenue. Should I pause? Sure. Keep going, or? No worries. The site is located on a block bound by East 80th Street to the south, East 81st Street to the north, First Avenue to the east, and 2nd Avenue to the west. The avenues support a mix of 4 to 5 story walk-ups and larger 20 to 40 story mixed-use buildings with ground floor retail. The mid-blocks are primarily residential and composed of mainly 5-story walk-up buildings. Along 79th Street, the buildings rise up to 20 stories and are primarily residential, with some mixed-use and commercial buildings. This map shows the surrounding area around the development site and oriented with north at the top of the slide. Most of the development site is located within a C19 district, with a small sliver on the eastern edge of the zoning lot zoned R8B. In the surrounding area, the avenues are zoned C19 and the mid-blocks are zoned R8B, except along 79th Street, which is zoned R10A, with C15 overlays at the avenue intersections. The land uses reflect the zoning, with higher density mixed-use buildings with ground floor retail located along the avenues and 4 to 5 story residential buildings on the mid-blocks. North of the site, within the surrounding area, a portion of 2nd Avenue lies within the Special Transit Land Use District. The area is served by the 86th Street Q train station, located about 6 blocks to the north, and the 77th Street station, 5 blocks southwest, which provides access to the 4 and 6 lines. The M79 SBS bus runs crosstown along 79th Street, a block south of the site, and north and southbound buses operate along 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Avenues. Taking a closer look at the development site, outlined here in red and oriented northeast, the zoning lot is composed of 6 tax lots, lots 49, 50, 51, 148, 149, and 7053 of block 1543. Altogether, the zoning lot contains 20,745 square feet. Lots 49, 50, 51, and 149 of the zoning lot are each improved with a 4-story mixed-use building, and lot 148 is improved with a 3-story mixed-use building. All 5 buildings contain residential uses with ground floor commercial space. Tax lot 7053 is the largest southernmost lot, located at the corner of 2nd Avenue and 80th Street, shaded here in gray. It's improved with a 30-story mixed-use building constructed in 2019. The ground floor of this building is the subject of the application, where Manhattan Schoolhouse is seeking a retail frontage waiver for a daycare. The proposed application is limited to a portion of the ground floor, highlighted here in pink. The 30-story mixed-use building contains approximately 208,500 square feet of floor area, with a base height of approximately 76 feet and a main building height of about 388 feet. It contains 72 dwelling units and a ground floor commercial space. The lot has 127.7 feet of frontage along 2nd Avenue and 100 feet of frontage along 80th Street. The ground floor commercial space occupies the entire 2nd Avenue frontage and a portion of the 80th Street frontage. The remaining 80th Street frontage is occupied by the residential lobby for the building. The applicant is proposing approximately 8,100 square feet of ground floor area, shaded in pink, for a Use Group 3 daycare facility. The daycare is currently only occupying a portion of this area. The proposed operation would accommodate 182 children, including infant, toddler, pre-K, and 3K aged children. 85 of these slots would be allocated to universal pre-K. The daycare would occupy the building's entire 127.7-foot frontage along 2nd Avenue and a 40.75-foot portion of the 80th Street frontage. In order to site the Manhattan Schoolhouse daycare at the project site, the applicant requires a waiver for Section 32435C of the zoning resolution. This image shows the ground floor frontage looking northeast along 2nd Avenue. Section 32435C requires that for buildings with 50 feet or greater frontages along wide streets in high-density commercial districts, at least 50% of the building frontage on the ground floor should be occupied with commercial uses in use groups 6A, 6C, and 6F, excluding bank and loan offices. Daycare facilities like the one proposed in this application fall under Use Group 3 and are therefore not allowed to take up more than 50% of the building's frontage as of right. The applicant has requested a certification to allow the entire frontage of the building along 2nd Avenue to be occupied by the Manhattan Schoolhouse daycare, as shown here. Here you can see the entire ground floor frontage looking southeast at the building. Manhattan Schoolhouse is allowed to occupy 63.85 feet of the 2nd Avenue frontage as of right and is requesting a certification to occupy the full 127.7 feet. This image shows the block looking south from the corner of East 80th Street and 2nd Avenue. There are several active ground floor commercial uses on the block, including a locksmith, a cleaner, and a couple of restaurants. Looking northwest at the ground floor of the block across the street, you can see that this side is also occupied by a number of active commercial uses, including a salon, a laundromat, a wine shop, and several restaurants and cafes. The required finding for the waiver of the retail frontage requirement is listed here. including that an adequate supply of retail uses on the ground floor exists in the surrounding area. The department believes that this application has met the finding and recommends approval. There are several retail uses in the surrounding area, and the applicant further submitted a letter confirming that a good faith effort was made to secure a commercial tenant. This application was presented at the land use meeting of Community Board 8 on June 14th. The board passed a resolution approving the project with 32 votes in favor, 0 opposed, and 3 abstaining. In summary, the applicant is requesting a CPC certification pursuant to Zoning Resolution Section 32435C to waive the retail frontage requirement to facilitate a daycare along the full frontage of the building at 1538 2nd Avenue. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much, and great job for your first time or any time. That was amazing. Thank you. This all looks fair enough to me. I just wanted to understand the waiver requirement. So the requirement is that an adequate supply of such uses here, which I guess is retail uses, already exist in the surrounding area. I guess what I'm confused about is what are we supposed to be evaluating here? Like, there's an adequate supply of what? Of spaces that are occupied by use groups 6A, 6C, and 6F? Or is it there's an adequate supply of vacant space? What are we trying to evaluate here?
That there's an adequate supply of the commercial uses in 6A, 6C, and 6F. So retail uses, shops, restaurants, stores, things of that nature.
So if I guess what I'm thinking is if you had just a lot of retail vacancy, which I suspect is certainly part of what's going on here, that would suggest that you don't really have an adequate supply of those retail uses because they don't exist, but you also would want to grant this waiver because there's no demand for the space, or less demand for the space. So this is really a question that I'm trying to figure out what this was designed to get to. It's obvious that they made an effort and were not able to get the conventional 6A, 6C, and 6F in there, so they went for something else.
Yeah, I see what you're asking. I think that the way that the text is written, it's asking if there's an adequate supply in the area, which I think that in the case of this application, that's why I showed the surrounding area. You can see that on the streets adjacent, or on the street next to the site, there are these commercial retail uses. But I see what you're saying about how it's written. I think that that might be why there's this additional, the commission may require that you provide this good faith marketing effort letter that the applicant did provide, which shows that they made an effort to secure a commercial tenant, but were not able to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, terrific. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to do this one by a voice vote here, just to prepare everybody, although...
I've got 7. You got 7?
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to seek assent by voice vote to send an approval letter on this one to the Buildings Department. Okay? Everybody ready for that?
Yeah.
We're ready.
Okay, all right.
Ready.
So all those in favor of sending an approval letter to the Buildings Department, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the ayes have it.
Eyes on.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right. The sixth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of an acquisition and disposition of city-owned property in Manhattan, Community District 8, and our presenter is Jose Trucios.
Welcome back, Jose.
Glad to be back. All right. Let's quickly get into sharing with you the application by the Department of Housing and Preservation and Development for the acquisition of the vacant portion of Block 1655, Lot 29.
It was certified on March 27 and duly referred out to Manhattan Community District 11 and the Board of Presidents for comments, and is now slated for the public hearing on Wednesday, July 12th. There were some questions about this development related to the actual previous disposition that I wanted to clarify. In the 1995 accelerated use disposition require or restricted the new developments to 4 units or less, and limited all other actions only to rehab and improving existing buildings. It wasn't until 2014 that HPD launched new programs like the neighborhood construction and the new infill home ownership opportunities, programs that were specific, focused on developing small lots and vacant city-owned lots. And in 2018, HPD launching their co-living program, seeking proposals for development. They picked Ascending Development in Alley Forney, prompting this application for the acquisition of the remaining portion of the lot for and subsequent disposition of the lot through Article 11. Quickly on the project overview, on the right side, you can see the existing conditions on the site. As I mentioned, it's only the vacant portion of lot 29. So it's very minimal and limited to about 2,700 square feet. So it's a tiny lot that is, limited by the zoning resolution to only stand at 100 feet or less. So this filling at 99 feet. And then it will be occupied by shared housing, which is consistent of 2 or more independently occupied rooms that share a kitchen or a bathroom, and housing type that can encompass a wide range of configurations and usually includes additional building-wide common spaces, and this designed to encourage the sense of community and create a home-like environment. The proposed development will contain approximately 21,000 square feet of total floor area, including 19,000 feet for shared dwelling units of nonprofit institutions for sleeping accommodations, use group 3, and about 3,000 square feet for community facility for supported social services. This translates to 4 shared housing units, 1 superintendent unit creating approximately 32 affordable rooming units. No accessory off-street parking will be provided. It's not required for affordable units within the transit zone, within the special transit district. And all the building will also be designed with the enterprise green standards. It will include green roof, varying refrigerant flow and heating and cooling systems. In order to help mitigate flood risk, the proposed development ground floor will be raised 3 feet from the reference plane to the flood-resistant construction elevation, and that's what the mechanical equipment will be located as well. And in terms of public review, Manhattan Community Board 11 voted to approve the projects on May 23rd, passing a resolution with 34 members in favor, none opposed, and none abstaining. The Manhattan Board of Presidents approved the project or issued a recommendation of approval on June 7, highlighting the importance of the need for housing in New York and encouraging the exploration for innovative housing models. There were no conditions required with the recommendations that were sent to us, mainly due to the strong working relationship between the development team, the community board, and the community in general. There were at least 6 meetings that were part of the public review requirement, which has, allowed the applicant or the development team to work with the community to meet all the expectations. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. So this one will be up for a public hearing on Wednesday. The applicant is who?
HPD and
HPD is the applicant here.
Development team.
Okay, great.
I believe they will be here on July 12th, sending as well. Mm-hmm.
Terrific. Great. We'll pick it up on Wednesday. Thanks, Jose.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move to the next pre-hearing item.
The 7th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Staten Island Community District 3. Our presenter is Amy Obanaga.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, good afternoon. This is a private application seeking a zoning map amendment to zoning map 33C and several non-ULURP actions pursuant to Special South Richmond Development District to facilitate the conversion of Block 4645 from a community facility use to a commercial use. The proposed zoning map amendment would amend existing R32 to an R32/C21 overlay. The project area includes a development site, Block 4635, Lot 425 on the left side of the screen, which is part of a larger zoning lot that includes Block 4635, Lots 405, 410, 418, 405. The parcel is zoned in R32 with a portion in a C21 commercial overlay on the east end of the zoning lot. As a little background, in 1998, the CPC granted zoning certification authorizations permitting development of the shopping center. In addition, in 1999, a modification was granted for the retail development of 2 parcels. Again, the proposing zoning map amendment would amend an existing R32 to an R32/C21 overlay. The proposed action would affect the development site as well as Block 4640, lots 405, 418, 425, and 995. Here are a few photographs. One is showing the site facing south. Second one is also facing south, a view of the parking lot in front of the lot in question. The last is facing the site from facing northwest. First 2 photographs working clockwise, facing northwest, facing adjacent to the site in question. And then the last photograph on the lower left is a view of the parking lot adjacent to the site facing southwest. Staten Island Community Board 3 voted on May 23rd, 2023, recommending approval of the application by a vote of 23 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions, and without conditions. The Borough President of Staten Island submitted a favorable recommendation without conditions as well. And again, to summarize, the requested action include a zoning map amendment to establish a C21 commercial overlay on an existing R32 zoning district at 125 Greaves Lane in the Bay Terrace neighborhood of Staten Island Community Board 3. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll pick it up on Wednesday. Thanks very much, Amy. This will go to public hearing on Wednesday morning. Okay, Ryan.
Okay. I do not see our presenter for the 9th item. We'll ping them, so I'll just, oh wait, the 8th item, never mind. The 8th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 1, and our presenter is Teal Daly.
Chair, just for the record, I'm recused in this matter.
Commissioner Rob Shaw is recused.
What's the problem?
Is Orlando?
We're okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
We have a quorum, and we're ready for you, Teal.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll be sharing a pre-hearing presentation for the 4218 31st Avenue rezoning. This is a private application in Astoria, Queens to facilitate an approximately 38,000 square foot apartment building with ground floor retail. The proposed development would have 33 housing units in a 6-story, 3.5 FAR building. Between 10 and 12 of these units would be income restricted. The applicant requests a zoning map amendment to change an existing R5 district with the C12 overlay to a R6A district with the C13 overlay and a R5 district. The applicant also requests a zoning text amendment to map a mandatory inclusionary housing area with options 1 and 2. And to answer a question from certification, I'll note at this time that the pre-war building on the north side of 31st Avenue, which is located outside of the project area, is a rent-stabilized building. Community Board 1 approved the application by a vote of 34 in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstentions. Conditions include designating half of the floor area for family-sized units, installing solar panels on the roof, and constructing a publicly accessible open space with any future development on Block 694. This last condition builds on a development proposal for this project when there were 2 applicants. The proposal was presented to the Community Board, but since that time, the second applicant removed themselves from the application. The Borough President approved the application with conditions, and these include working with minority and woman-owned business enterprises, as well as hiring local residents for construction and management of the building, and exploring implementation of a composting system within the development. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Benjamin.
Quick question. In the apartment layouts, did they in fact fulfill the request for larger family-sized apartments?
Because we've only seen a submission from certification, and so that condition came during the community board recommendation, so we haven't gotten new illustrative floor plans, but it's a question that you're welcome to ask the applicant on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Ryan, let's move on to the next one. Thank you, Teal.
Okay, I will call it, but I do not see the staff here yet. The 9th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of zoning map and zoning text amendment in the Bronx Community District 9, and our presenter would be Cesar Delgado, joined on Zoom or something. Up there. Alejandra, do you know if Cesar is here?
She wants upstairs.
Okay.
Can we skip it and go to the next?
Yeah, sure. We can wait till he gets here, and when he gets here, we'll just. Okay. All right. The 10th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a letter of intent to acquire office space in Brooklyn Community District 2. I believe Kyra. Okay, we will. All right.
Yeah, we want you to do it, Dan.
Okay.
Ms. Kyler here?
All right, 532 Fulton?
Sure.
Okay, DCAS and the Department of Health want 100, they seek a 195A office application to acquire suitable office space for the Department of Health. It's one floor within an 8-story office building connected to a 40-story residential building. It's 18,000 square feet of office space on a single floor, 20-year term.
Okay.
Lease would expire in 2026. Is that sufficient for us to pick this up on Wednesday?
Yeah. Works for me. Yeah.
This is 532 Fulton, and office space for the Department of Health. Okay? Great.
I'm fine.
Done. Let's
I'm
move on
happy
to the
if
next one. Let's go.
You guys are.
On for hearing on Wednesday. Yep. Okay, let's go back to the Bronx. Are they here? Okay, let's keep going.
Go ahead, Alejandra. We'll just have you do it. And you can, it's short, but there are some important things we wanted to cover with the commission.
Yeah.
So we'll get the. Yes.
Thank you very much.
That's very good for a first time.
Presenting for first time in the commission.
Or any time.
Okay, Ali, go ahead.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. This is a pre-hearing for 1460, 1480 Sheridan Boulevard rezoning. Next. The applicant, Simon Companies, is requesting a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to add a new MH zoning area at 1460, 1480 Sheridan Boulevard, located in Crotona Park East in the Community District 9 in the Bronx. These actions will facilitate, that's good, Jeff. We can go to the next one. These actions will facilitate the proposed development that consists of 2 sites that will be developed with 24-story mixed-use buildings. They will contain in total 970 intended to be income-restrictive dwelling units, approximately 21,000 square feet of commercial space, approximately 100 parking spaces in the basement, and approximately 56,000 square feet of public access area. Next. You want to continue?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Sorry for that. This is Site 1, 1460 Sheridan Boulevard. It will be developed with one 24-story building containing approximately 304 units and 5,000 square feet of commercial uses. Would be located on the ground floor along with residential amenities. Next slide. This is Site 2. This is 1480 Sheridan Boulevard. It will be developed with two buildings containing 666 dwelling units, 8,000 square feet of commercial uses on the ground floor, along with residential amenities, and 100 parking spaces on the basement level. Both buildings will have a base height of 7 stories, and after a setback, will reach a total height of 24 stories. Next slide. In order to facilitate these developments, the applicant is requesting a zoning map amendment to rezone from the existing M11 light manufacturing zoning district to an R73 medium density zoning district with a C24 commercial overlay. Conterminous to the project area, the applicant is proposing to modify Appendix F of the zoning resolution to establish an MIH area with options 1 and 2 over the Block 3017. Next slide. Together with the land use actions presented today, the development would be facilitated by additional actions that are still being reviewed under a separate application to facilitate public access to the waterfront. For Site 1, 1460 Sheridan Boulevard, a waterfront certification would be required. The approximately 18,000 square feet waterfront public access area at this site would have an open to the public connection to Starlight Park at the north. The short public walkway would include a connection to Sheridan Boulevard at the south and would contain walking paths, vegetation, lighting, seating and tables, bicycle racks, and waste bins. Next slide. For Site 2, 1480 Sheridan Boulevard, DCP is also reviewing under the same separate application a waterfront certification and a waterfront authorization to waive visual corridor requirements. The approximately 20,300 square feet waterfront public access area at this site would have an upland connection and a visual corridor developed along the northern lot line of the site between Sheridan Boulevard and the Bronx Corridor, Bronx River. Another access from Sheridan Boulevard to the waterfront would be through a second visual corridor and public access area provided between Building 2 and 3. This space would be improved with an amphitheater, vegetation, lighting, and other passive recreational uses. Next slide. Related to this visual corridor, the waterfront authorization to waive them is intended to allow the flexibility needed to provide the visual corridors by modifying their location in order to make the building footprints more efficient given the site characteristics. On the left part of this drawing, you can see the visual corridor 1 with the required location on purple and the alternative proposed location in green. By pushing the visual corridor to follow the property limit, this prevents the generation of a residual space of 35 feet towards the property line. At the right, between the two buildings, you can also see the required visual corridor in purple and the proposed one in green. Next slide. Regarding the environmental review, a notice of completion of a draft environmental impact statement was issued on April 7th of this year. The GIS identifies significant adverse impacts with respect to transportation traffic, transportation pedestrians, construction traffic, and no other significant adverse impacts were identified. Mitigation measures are identified in the GIS and will be explored further in the filed EIS. Next slide. Before moving to the Community District Board and Borough President recommendations, it's worth to mention that certification of this application was on April 10th, Community Board hearing was on May 18th, approving the proposal with 27 votes in favor. Borough President held a public hearing on June 15th, and the CPC's public hearing is scheduled for July 12th, and it is also for the draft environmental impact statement of the proposed development. Next slide. The Bronx Community Board 9 held a public hearing on May 18th of this year, where the applicant presented the proposed development and the board voted to approve with conditions the proposal. The board submitted a letter of recommendation with the conditions, and the applicant submitted a letter of commitment where they agreed to act on the community board's concerns. In the briefing package, you received the full list of the conditions and the responses, but as a summary, the board requested the following. Preference to local and minority communities for workforce hiring, create high-quality service jobs on site, collaborate with minority and women-owned business enterprises and Community Board 9 to foster equitable participation on the contracting process, recommendations on public safety, security around the site, parking management companies, and interagency coordination. They requested to meet with relevant stakeholders to discuss the connection to Starlight Park, and request to work with Community Board 9 on local retail recommendations. Next slide. To give some responses to the questions raised during review session. Regarding density and height of buildings, the applicants responded that the surrounding area is comprised of zoning districts R8X, R7A, and R71, and directly across Sheridan Boulevard are the Compass residences, which consist of 6 buildings approved in October 2011 as a large-scale general development special permit and a rezoning to R8X. The applicant finds these facts sufficient to argue that the density and height of the development is appropriate for the area and consistent with the neighborhood. Next. Regarding building architecture and materials, the building base will include articulation features and changes in materiality to bring the buildings to scale and at the pedestrian level. The architect will be prepared to discuss materials and design at the public hearing. Next slide. Regarding 1480 Sheridan Boulevard Visual Corridor, the applicant is requesting the waiver as the means of procedure, but objectively is a request of modification to provide the same width of visual corridor, but relocated to mitigate the irregular shape of the site and be able to provide a larger amount of units and open space. Next. Regarding AMI and unit breakdown, on the screen we can see preliminary numbers that don't vary from the review session for certification. The applicant has been meeting with Housing Preservation and Development over the past months, and most recently on June 26th. The applicant will continue to work with HPD and apply under the HPD's Mix and Match program. Information on the rationale behind the quantity of 3 bedrooms hasn't been received from the applicant. Next slide. Regarding the consideration of the Bronx River Greenway, the applicant has been working with parks to ensure a well-designed open space that works as a transition to Starlight Park and is providing open connections to Sheridan Boulevard throughout the 2 sites. And yeah, they are seeing this as a continuation of the Greenway. Next slide. Regarding community outreach efforts, in addition to working with Community Board 9, Borough President Gibson, and Council Member Salamanca over the past few years, the applicant met with the Community Boards 2 and 3, which are adjacent to the Community Board where the proposed development is located, the Bronx River Alliance, the Youth Ministries for Peace and Justice, and the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. Next slide. Through a recommendation letter with a resolution of approved with conditions, the Borough President's Office expressed support to the applicant, pointing out an outstanding trajectory as developers in the Bronx. They explicitly support the rezoning from a manufacturing district to stop pollution problems from either direct or indirect runoff into the Bronx River. They also support the height of the buildings, recognizing there are trade-offs that need to be made to increase the amount of housing in the borough and provide quality open space. The recommendations from the Borough President to fully approve the proposed development include increasing the amount of 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. She also included accomplishing a seamless connection to Starlight Park and making the commercial space a restaurant, a cafe, a supermarket, a daycare, a recreational or educational use. She requested working to accomplish a better depicted high-quality design of the buildings and coming back to the Borough President's Office for approval before going to the Department of Buildings. And finally, she recommends that when hiring, the developer makes use of union labor, hiring locally and minority and women-owned business enterprises. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll pick this up on Wednesday at the public hearing. And just so I understand, we're hearing the zoning change portion of this for Lot 74 and Lot 29, Development Site 1 and 2, but we're not yet at the waterfront actions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
The information shared about the waterfront, it was just to give background on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that will be coming at a later date, one for a certification and one for an authorization, correct?
That is correct. Both of them will require certification and one authorization.
Okay, great.
Commissioner Marin has his hand up.
Commissioner Marin, go right ahead.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. A couple of questions. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to really understand something. We're not waiving visual corridors, but what we're saying is we are looking to approve the change in visual corridors. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are not waiving. The mechanism is to waive the visual corridors, but the reality is that it's just a mechanism to modify the location of them.
Understood.
But they are complying with
that's correct. And on slide 15, where you show the waterfront corridors, it appears that they also have an alternate plan to continue or to keep the current corridors as planned, which I would opine work better for two reasons. One is because of the upper connection coming down onto the waterfront, and of course the fact that the Sheridan ramp has now been completely demolished, and the view towards this area has completely changed. These buildings are going to be a statement in this community. So I would opine that I do like the the right-hand side of the slide where you show the existing corridors as planned originally. Then on slide 12, I believe, if we can go to that slide for a second, we discuss MWBE, and I'd like a little bit further clarification because it says something about maximum of $5,000 per participation. I'd like a little bit of elaboration on that, please. If you can, if you can't, if the applicant could discuss on Wednesday, that would be perfect.
Yeah, we will let the applicant to clarify that part of the response to the community board.
And lastly, because on slide 16, I did not see any mention of 3 bedrooms, and of course, this is the first that I hear of 4 bedrooms, which is a good thing. Oh, here they go. So they're here on the left-hand side. They just weren't visible. I was concentrating on the bottom table where you show the incomes and family size, and I don't see anything there for 3 bedrooms, so I was a bit thrown off. If they can elaborate on that for Wednesday, that would also be appreciated.
Okay, I will transmit that request to the applicant.
And then one last statement. I do certainly appreciate, and I know that the borough president also made comment on design. This newest rendering clearly shows that there's been some thought to breaking up the space and then bringing in some high quality design for that area. So that's appreciated. And that would be it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we will move this to the public hearing on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, Ryan, we have our last 2, I believe.
Yes. Also just note that our presenter for the DOH/MH office space is here if there are any questions. But
I did a less good job than you would have done, but I think I got the job done, so thank you.
The 11th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a special permit in Brooklyn Community District 2, and Rita Mahesh is here to present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Waiting for the slides. This is a private application for a special permit to waive off-street parking requirements to facilitate a 4-building, 238,000 square foot mixed-use development with a total of approximately 300 apartments, including 80 income-restricted apartments in the Borum Hill neighborhood of Community District 2 in Brooklyn. As the Commission may recall, the project area is in the southern edge of the Borum Hill neighborhood between downtown Brooklyn and Gowanus. The recently approved land use actions on this block include the 280 Bergen Street rezoning adopted in December of 2022 and the 98 3rd Avenue rezoning adopted in June 2022, shown here in yellow and blue respectively. The proposed action is a follow-up to the 280 Bergen Street rezoning application. The applicant is seeking this special permit to waive all required parking spaces per recommendations from the Community Board and the City Council made during ULURP for the previous rezoning application. The proposed development is a 4-building mixed-use development comprised of 2 9-story buildings with residential, commercial, and community facility uses, and 2 townhome-style residential buildings. It would have a total floor area of approximately 238,000 square feet, including 228,000 square feet of residential space, 9,600 square feet of commercial space, and 10,000 square feet of community facility space. The proposed development would include approximately 300 dwelling units, of which a total of 80 units would be income restricted pursuant to MIH Option 1, and a community benefits agreement through which the applicant has agreed to provide 5 affordable units in addition to the MIH requirement. Parking is required for 50% of the market rate units in R7A and R7D districts. The applicant is seeking to waive this requirement per the proposed special permit. The previously proposed ground floor parking garage would be replaced with an outdoor space for resident use. The applicant is seeking a special permit pursuant to Section 74-533. No parking spaces are required for the income-restricted units in the transit zone. The R7A and R7D districts require parking spaces to be provided for 50% of the market rate units, which would generate a requirement of approximately 110 spaces. Within the transit zone, the Commission may permit a reduction in the parking requirements in accordance with the provisions of the special permit. The applicant is seeking to waive all required parking spaces. The applicant notes that the proposed development is in proximity to a multitude of mass transit options, including 9 subway lines, bus service, alternative modes such as car share and city bike access, as well as regional transit access with the Long Island Railroad, which serve to minimize the need for private auto ownership and off-street accessory parking. This application was certified on March 13th and duly referred to Brooklyn Community Board 2 and the Borough President. On April 19th, Brooklyn Community Board 2 held a public hearing and on May 10th voted to approve the application, 30 in favor, 7 opposed, and none abstaining. The Brooklyn Borough President held a public hearing on June 13th and submitted a recommendation on June 21st, recommending to approve the application with conditions that the developer explore adding additional affordable units to further the project's purpose and in response to cost savings provided by a parking waiver. That concludes my presentations, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Vice Chair Knuckles.
What MIH is the developer proposing in this case?
MIH Option 1.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amrita. We will pick this up on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, Ryan, last item.
The 12th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Brooklyn Community District 15, and our presenter is Amelia Clark. She is on Zoom.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is a pre-hearing for the 2761 Plum 2nd Street rezoning in Sheepshead Bay, Community District 15, Brooklyn, that was certified by the Commission on March 24th. It is a private application for a zoning map amendment from a C3 district to an R32 and R32 C23 district. No new development, enlargement, or change of use is proposed. Slide, please. The site has been under the jurisdiction of the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals since May of 1980. This proposed R32 zoning district would render the existing eating and drinking establishments conforming as of right uses, freeing the applicant of the need to continuously renew the 73242 BSA special permit every 5 years. The proposed C23 overlay would also reduce the accessory parking requirement. As discussed during review session, R32 is the residential equivalent of the existing C3 zoning district. Slide, please. On May 23rd, Community Board 15 voted favorably for the application with 33 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstaining. Slide, please. The Brooklyn Borough President has not yet submitted a recommendation for this application. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much. We're going to pick this one up on Wednesday at a public hearing. Ryan, do we have any other items for today?
We have the future votes, Linden Street Historic District, 80 Pine Street. This is the IBO office space acquisition. We also have the 61st Avenue authorization, 589 Fulton Street. This is the curb cut authorization. 94 Dalemer Road, 17, 19, 23 Altman Avenue, and 20 Seidman Avenue. Also, in your briefing package and scheduled for a vote on the July 26th, we have a landmark designation for the former Colored School number 4 in Manhattan Community District 4. Our post-hearing follow-ups are agency recommendations for the South Richmond zoning relief. Don't know if George is here, but I will say that this is an agency application and that we recommend approval to streamline these, and I'm getting thumbs up.
It would be very awkward if we didn't.
Yeah, it would be very weird. 893 Eagle Avenue, this is, Dooling couldn't be here, but the agency is recommending approval to facilitate 83 affordable and supportive housing units in a transit-accessible site in the South Bronx. We believe that this meets the findings of the special permit due to its proximity to transit and the appropriateness of the area. On 262 Fifth Avenue, we do have Connor Clark here in the room. We'll get up his a very short slide to do that, and Emily will get you queued up here too.
Hello, Connor.
Hi. Good afternoon, commissioners.
Hello.
You can see the information on this. You've seen this a few times, 23 spaces, 5 as of right, 26 residential units, automated facility. We have a statement. The Department of City Planning staff has reviewed the 262 Fifth Avenue application for a parking special permit in Community District 5 and believes that the findings have been met. The development site will contain a 56-story, 26-unit building. The proposed parking facility will contain 23 spaces, 18 more than the 5 allowed as of right. The residential growth parking study found that during the 10-year look-back period in the project study area, there was a net decrease of 26 parking spaces and a net increase of 2,762 dwelling units. This gives the proposed project a residential growth parking ratio of negative 0.9%. compared to the permitted as-of-right parking ratio of 20%, which indicates that the increase in parking is reasonable and not excessive. Staff would also like to note that the facility would contain 19 bicycle spaces and that 11 car spaces would have electric vehicle charging stations installed, and all spaces would be EV ready.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Great.
And last but not least, 1233 57th Street rezoning, and Emily Bachman is here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Last one.
We're late in the day, but you have our full, undivided attention.
Thank you. It'll be pretty quick, too.
Here we go.
Okay. Good afternoon. The department supports this application, which would facilitate the development of a new 8-story residential building with 60 units, 18 of which would be permanently income restricted at 1233 57th Street in the Borough Park neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 12. The current R5 zoning has been in place since 1961 and does not include opportunities for growth. Community District 12 has seen some of the lowest levels of housing production in the city. Since 2010, the district's supply of housing units has grown by just 3%, far outpaced by 8% population growth over the same period of time. The change in zoning to district to R6A would allow for growth in a way that is in context with the neighborhood and reflects the site's location near a subway station at the convergence of 2 wide mixed-use commercial corridors and between R5 and R6 districts. R6A is a contextual zoning district that serves as a transition zone between R5 and R6 districts on either side of the project area and has transition rules which require setbacks and height limits adjacent to the area zoned R5. The zoning text amendment would ensure that future developments in the project area will provide permanently income-restricted housing that is sorely needed in Community District 12, where just 95 new income-restricted units have been constructed since 2014.
And both the certified and revised versions of the proposed development would take full advantage of the maximum floor area ratio available through the proposed R6A district, and the department believes that either plan would be appropriate. We support the height, massing, and higher unit count reflected in the certified proposal and the reduced number of parking spaces included in the revised plans. And that's all I have for you. I can take questions if you have them.
Great, thank you. It's the same zoning designation, just a revised proposal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Benjamin?
But I just want to be clear, the applicants, this is a rezoning, so the applicant isn't actually tied to any of these?
Without any kind of community benefits agreement, no.
Okay.
R6A would
Allow either
facilitate
one or
either one of these proposals and anything
some
in
other
between.
one.
Yeah.
This will be up for a vote next.
It's in August, I believe.
It'll be coming for a vote. We'll be
July
scheduled.
26th.
Oh, July 26th, so
Yeah.
it's not this coming Wednesday, but the following.
Coming to a commission near you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
thanks.
All right, Ryan, anything else for today?
No further
Wonderful.
items.
Thanks, everybody, for your time and attention. We will see you all on Wednesday. That part. Which part is